Good morning, welcome everyone. So we're back today for day 2, Virtual Careers Insight Day with allied health professions. A lot of you that are on this morning were on this session yesterday, so you kind of know what to expect, which is great because we had a good session yesterday, lots of good questions. Again, the session is being recorded. We record everything that we do so that we can put it on our website afterwards. I know that some of you will be teachers checking out the session today and then using it in classrooms either now with students or later on with your students. And that once the recording is available, which is fantastic because it's got lots of great information in it. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to interact in the chat box, okay? We've got people from allied health professions again today, and they're going to be showing us a few different things, and we've got some group activities to do as well. So let's get involved. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask to come off mute and use your microphone, especially when we go out into breakout rooms. So yeah, let's get involved with today. Remember what I said as well, this session is being recorded. So if you are watching the recording and you have questions, remember I do a drop-in clinic every Wednesday, 4:30 till 5:30, where you can come along and ask questions. There's no agenda, so it's for you guys. So if you are watching the recording, you think, I've got questions, I need answers about this, and I don't know who to speak to, come to my sessions, come to me, we'll discuss it, I'll have the information for you, and we can show you where to get the rest of the information that you need. So, I've said it already, use the chat box, raise your hand. Those of you that have just joined in the last couple of minutes, let me know in the chat box. Are you a student? Are you a teacher? Tell me who you are. Tell me what year you're in. Were you here yesterday? A few of the guys already answered for me this morning, but let's get the rest of you. Find that chat box and put a hello in there. I've put some in there already for you guys. So answer me back so I know you know where it is. I am Max. I am the head of student support and events. You will have seen me before plenty of times on different events, different videos that we do. And if you were here yesterday, obviously you will have seen me yesterday. So I do events like this, I host them. And then as I explained a second ago, I do the student support side. So when you want to apply to opportunities or you want to know how to write your CV or how to prepare for your interviews, that's where you come to me and we help you out with that kind of stuff. And we'll get you prepped and ready. That's my job with student support. We're going to run a quick poll. You're going to find that some of these questions are going to become a little bit repetitive for you guys, but that's important because we need to gather this data. It's for us so that we know that our sessions are having an impact, but also we need to know who we're reaching and who we're getting out to as well. So forgive us if they do seem a little bit repetitive, but it is really important information for us. So I'm going to put the poll up in a second. I'm actually going to ask Rosie. Rosie, can you launch the poll for me, please?
Yep, all set.
Thank you. So you guys should be able to see the poll. Let me know when it's done, Rosie, and share the results for us.
Yeah, sure. It's been up for about 10 seconds. I'll give you guys about 1 minute to complete the poll.
Fantastic.
Great, about 30 seconds. 30 seconds left, you guys. We have about 50% of you have answered. Great, 10 seconds left. Perfect, gonna go ahead and close it. And Max, can you see those results?
I can't, so you're gonna have to take me through it, please.
Perfect, so first question, what year group are you in or streaming to? So 78% of you are in or streaming to year 12, and then we have a few year 13s too. So great, thanks for being here, you guys. What would you like to do when you leave school? So I know if you're streaming to people that this may have been kind of a mixed bag. So we have about 78% are looking at university, about 44% are looking at an apprenticeship, and you could answer multiple answers for this. So that's why those percentages don't equal 100. And then a few of you said other. So I don't see anything in the chat box, but go ahead and put it in there, what you mean by other. And then finally, how much do you already know about careers in healthcare? So 100% of you know a moderate amount, so you're in the right place. You're going to learn a lot of great information today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Rosie. So like we said, that's really important stuff to know so that we can help you and we can get that information to you. Now, we've got some really important people to meet, because it's not about me today. I'm just hosting the session. We're going to move forward and we're going to go through tips for interviewing, and we're going to meet Amanda in a second. I'm going to introduce Amanda, and she's going to share some slides. But what we are going to ask you to do is the same as we did yesterday. And remember, I know that these questions can be a bit repetitive, but it's important for us to capture it. Either put that URL into your browser, or you can scan that QR code with your camera phone, with the camera on your phone, and it will take you straight through to the page. And just to make sure it does work, and answer those questions, and then let us know once you're done. I'm doing it as well, just so we make sure that it works.
So I know that there's a couple people on right now that are streaming to groups. So make sure that you're in a classroom. If you're in a classroom, that as many students as possible, go ahead and complete this.
I'm trying to do the link, but I don't think to paste in the browser.
Does it not work for you, Melina?
No.
Oh, I can't. Oh, no, wrong one. Hang on a second. Let's go back. You should try using the QR code on your mobile phone. If you've got an iPhone, you just open your camera and hover your camera over that QR code, and it'll take you to the page. I mean, I say that I sound like an expert, but I only learned that recently.
Thank you.
I had to do it for my sessions. Right, how are we looking, Rosie?
Yeah, pretty good. Why don't we give it one more minute?
Fantastic. Remember, it's only 3 simple questions, or 4, but don't think about it too much. And then if you are done, just put it in the chat box for me, please. Brilliant. Okay. I think most people are done, so I think we're ready to move on, hopefully. At this point, I get to introduce Amanda. Good morning, Amanda. And I don't know if you want to share your screen now and go for it.
No, I've only really got the person specification to share, so no sort of real slides. But yeah, thanks for that introduction, Max.
No worries.
It's fantastic to be here, fantastic to get the opportunity to speak to all our youngsters that are coming up and going to be out there in the workplace in the next few years. So I am the recruitment manager at Hertfordshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. And yeah, my role is to sort of manage our recruitment process into the trust for all sort of AHP roles and also nurses to all of our substantive roles. So I've been asked along today to share with you some tips for interviewing, but I thought I'd take it back a step, because in order to reach the interview stage, you've got to get through the application stage. Now, traditionally in the NHS, we do application forms. So when you apply, you'll apply online, you'll complete your application form. That will go forward to the shortlisting panel. And then they will shortlist you and invite you to attend the interview. So I thought I would share with you quite an important document. This will start. Yeah, okay. This is sort of quite an important document, which is that coming up? Here we go.
It is.
Can you see that? Okay, so this is one of our documents, a job description. They're all sort of set out fairly similarly, but what we're sort of trying to do now is sort of move with the times, and a lot of this information will form part of the advert, but the job description and person specification will be attached to our vacancies that are generally advertised on either NHS Jobs or on the Trust's websites. So this is a typical example of a job description in the NHS, and I'm not going to go through it in a massive detail, but that sort of sets out the sort of the job role, the responsibilities that comes with the role, and what you'll sort of be doing, and everything else. And then attached to that also is our person specification, and this is quite important in terms of how you prepare for your application process and also for your interview. So within the person specification, there's information there about the sort of the criteria and the success criteria that we're looking for when we're shortlisting and also when we're interviewing. So you'll see we've got the essential criteria and desirable. So if there's a little sort of dot or a tick or however it's sort of presented, these are generally sort of things that are essential to the role. So for example, here for this star worker, which is a support time and recovery at a band 4, which is kind of a bit of an entry level position, we're looking for somebody to have MVQ level 3 qualification or a mental health certificate level 3. So all the way through this person specification, you'll see the sort of things that we're looking for you to be able to evidence as part of your application form. And given that you'll be coming from school, you'll be coming from university into the workplace, think about all those transferable skills that you've learned along the way. So not just necessarily from a work situation. Think about, you know, at home, things that you've been involved in through school as well and through university, and include all of that information, because that's what will help you get shortlisted. So it's not too much in there, but obviously the sort of skills and knowledge. So you're looking at sort of basic written communication skills and good verbal communication skills. Some of those are the most important sort of skills that we're looking for at this sort of level, the ability to communicate well, particularly with sort of service users, and build rapport and stuff like that. So I can take that down now. So yeah, so just thinking about your sort of supporting statement. So we ask, so instead of submitting a CV, you'll be submitting an application form, and as part of your supporting statement that you'll be putting together, that's what we'll be looking for is you know, your sort of skills, knowledge and abilities, and to put into that supporting statement. So once you've made it through the shortlisting phase and you come to the interview stage, you're sort of looking at preparing for that interview. And again, that's about going back to your person specification and looking at the criteria, and then thinking about what sort of questions they're going to ask you in that interview, which relate directly back to this person specification. And another thing to do is research the organisation that you're looking to join. Go on their website, have a look at the information, what their values are in particular, because that's quite important to see whether, you know, that organisation, that company is in line with your own values and what you want to sort of achieve and over the sort of your long-term goals, really. So then I sort of mentioned about sort of preempting some of the questions which you might be asked. Now there's sort of three sort of different categories of questions that they might use in an interview situation. So you might come across a scenario-based type question, and that's where they'll sort of think of a scenario and then they'll ask you what you would do if you were in that situation. Another type of question is what we call a competency-based question. And competency-based questions are looking for you to think about your past experience and what you've done in the past to meet that sort of question. So if I give you an example of a competency-based question, it would be something like, please tell us a little bit about a time when the way that you welcomed someone made a difference. So that's an example of a competency-based question. So it's thinking about a time when you did that and then structuring your answer to tell somebody about that particular example. And then we also look at people's values and whether they're in line with the organisation. So that's why it's quite important that you do your research on that organisation. What are their values? Really understand them. So at HPFT, our values are welcoming, kind, positive, respectful, and professional. So think about what sort of questions you might be asked around those values, and it could be linked to a competency-based question. So our values are about, you know, how and why we do things. So it's not just what we do, it's why we do it and what our sort of drivers are in that sort of behavioural sort of situation. So just thinking about sort of some of the questions again and sort of preempting what they might be. Again, just think about, don't just think about, sorry, the why and the how, and what you've learned from that experience. Think about what you would have done differently as well. So we're always learning all the time. So think about, whether there's any examples where you think in hindsight you might have done it slightly differently. And I think something that I found particularly useful is keeping a CPD log. So when you're sort of faced with certain situations, keep a note of them. What did you learn from that? Because that will always help you sort of formulate some of your answers, especially for some of those competency sort of based questions. And also one of the most useful acronyms to try and remember when you're sort of trying to put your answer together for an interview situation is what we call the STAR acronym. So that's STAR. And that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So that's looking at what was the situation you were in at that time, what was the task you were doing, what action did you take? So if you were sort of part of a team and it was a collective sort of event that you were running, that you were involved in, always think about what part did you play in that, because people will always want to know that you can work as a team, brilliant, but also what was your individual contribution to that task, and then thinking about the result as well. And then I sort of mentioned after that, was there anything that you could have learned from that situation, and would you have done it differently, and would you do it differently again in the future? So thinking about sort of any other questions. I think when you're sort of starting at the start of the interview, they will always try and make you feel welcome. Everybody wants you to deliver your best possible self. So they will try and relax you with sort of some welcoming questions, some open questions. And now at the moment, we're still conducting a lot of our interviews over Teams. So again, the preparation for that is making sure that you're in a room, that you're not going to be disturbed, that you've got good Wi-Fi, that you've turned your phone off as well. And that's, you know, if you're in a face-to-face interview. So it's all of those, sort of thinking through all of those little housekeeping rules, and maybe have a checklist so that, you know, you could go through that and know that you've done everything and that you're ready. Because sometimes in an interview situation, we're all nervous. Even, you know, people that are used to going for interviews, you still get nervous. So don't think that you're the only person that's going to get nervous, because that's absolutely not true. I've seen senior level managers get really nervous at interviews because they're so passionate about what they want to do, and they want that job, and they want to be able to sort of go and deliver the best that they can. So yeah, don't think that you're the only one who ever gets nervous at interviews. But I think to help with those nerves, the best thing you can do is to really sort of prepare yourself. So again, that's sort of going back to basics, understand the organisation, understand the job role that you're going for, think about some of the questions that you might be asked, relate it back to the person specification and the job role itself, because a lot of that preparation will then enable you to sort of prepare well, and then hopefully feel less nervous about going into that situation. And also people who are interviewing you as well, they get nervous because they're nervous about making the right choices and making a good impression on you. Because let's not forget that it's a really competitive sort of employment world out there at the moment, and it is a candidate market, really. So although you might sort of be up against sort of 4 or 5 different people for the role, you've probably got 3 or 4 other interviews that you're going for at exactly the same time. So that organisation want to make a good impression for you. They want you to be interested in their role and interested in their team. So think about some questions that you might want to ask them about their organisation and about their management style. Sometimes you can think about, you know, what are you going to be like as my manager? Because it's important for you to understand what it's going to be like to be managed by that person. Because at the same time, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Amanda?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Now,
of course.
Obviously, you're a recruitment manager, and I used to work in recruitment, so I understand your point of view. One of the things that so students that have been on my sessions before will know that I always talk about the STAR method. But when we talk about those competency-based questions, because we're looking at students that, let's be blunt, may have never had a job before.
Yep.
Okay, so they might not have any work experience, but we always try to tell students, but they have other experience in other areas of life. So what examples of competencies, or what are good examples of things that they could have done that you would want to hear from an interview? So like when they are putting the STAR method together, like teamwork or working under pressure, what examples could they use if they've never had work experience? And before you answer that, I will also just say that Merlina has put in the chat box the link to STAR method. There's a link in the chat box to the internet. And I know, Miss Cooper, you've got a class of students with you today. Make sure that they can take that link away afterwards and use it and explore it. So Amanda, yeah, give me some examples.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions that I sort of gave earlier was, please tell us about a time when the way that you welcomed someone made a difference. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a work-related situation. It could be whilst you're at school, if somebody has come into the reception area, for example, at school, and they're looking a bit confused and they're looking a bit lost, or it's somebody who's new to the school, for example. So you can take all of those examples. How did you make them feel welcome? What was it that you did that made them feel welcome? Did you take them to reception? Did you show them? Did you introduce them to the person on reception and find out from them what it was that they were there for? So that's, I think that's quite a good example of how you make somebody feel welcome. So what was the situation? What was the task? So it was to find out a little bit more about how you could help that person. What action did you take? So looking at it from their perspective, what help did they ask for? Were you able to help them with that? And if you weren't able to help them with that, did you signpost them to somebody who could help them with that? So what was the result? Was that person then, did they feel more relaxed? You could ask them a question, for example, to say, is there anything else I can help you with? Because that gives you your feedback then, that you're able to then understand whether that is exactly what they wanted, and they can thank you for your time, and that's a really sort of good example to sort of take away with you. And as I mentioned, all those little things, keep a note of them, because they will come in really handy. And when you're prepping for your role, go back to the person specification and think about those times, and look at the organisation's values, and think about all the examples that you'll have from home life, from school, that you'll be able to talk about in an interview situation. Did you want any more examples, Max?
No, I'm just trying to think. I don't know, maybe I was thinking maybe we could ask the students if they've got any examples of what they would use in an interview. So if you want to put in the chat box, think of those questions that Amanda was speaking of. What examples would you use that are relevant to your life now? Put them in the chat box and let us see what you've got. And don't be shy. Everything is relevant, because Amanda, at this point, really, it is everything is relevant, and it doesn't have to be something that they're currently doing at this moment in time. Well, actually, I'll ask your opinion on that. And the only reason why I ask that is because when I work with students, and a lot of them will say to me, well, I used to do this, but that was a couple of years ago. Well, I'm not doing that anymore because I'm in the middle of mocks and I'm doing my exams, so I've had to drop a lot of things. I always say to them, it's still relevant, whatever you've done in the past years, because it builds a picture. So give us those examples. And Miss Copper, I know that you've got a classroom of students, so ask them and see what they've got, and put some examples in the chat box. So great, yeah, school or work experience, but give me a bit more detail. Give me some examples of situations. Okay, look, Rosie is straight in. Perfect. She did NHS cadets. That's got to count for something, right?
Oh, brilliant. That's amazing.
What else have we got? Give us more examples. Think of those competency-based questions, and in what scenarios do you use them? And even when you think of that scenario that Amanda just shared about welcoming somebody, think about it, are you part of a team, and did you have to welcome somebody new into your team? And that could be a sports team, it could be an academic team. Okay, good. So we've got volunteering for a charity or community group.
Brilliant, yeah. You'll have some amazing examples from that experience.
Demonstrating care values within work experience, absolutely. George is a dance teacher assistant and has helped introduce new children into a lesson. Oh,
fantastic. Yeah.
Those are the kind of examples you want to see, right, Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even if it's helping relatives as well. So examples of where you sort of helped a relative, you've helped them sort of with any sort of care related situations, home, or even if it's to understand technology a bit better. All of those are really good examples. Oh, brilliant. Alfie volunteered at St John Ambulance team.
Brilliant. And then in Miss Copper's class, we've got helping the community during the pandemic. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So all of those, you would have gained some really fantastic, relevant experience that you can think about, and sort of think about sort of some of those questions that you might get asked at an interview.
When you think about those answers as well, and you know, you're saying helping the community during the pandemic, remember to go a little bit deeper as well, and use that. Have a look at that STAR technique and how you can use that. And Amanda, you said it already, didn't you, that when you use the STAR method to answer a question, so you're looking at the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And the result sometimes can be negative. It doesn't always have to be positive.
Yeah.
But the action, we really want to know what that particular person did, not what the team did. We want to know what that particular person did. Because if we know what the team did, we don't know what we're interviewing the person on. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, that's some good examples that we've got there. That's good.
And I think also, you know, some of those sort of opening questions you'll get in an interview is what prompted you to apply for the role. So again, that's sort of thinking about, you know, why did I apply for this role? What was it in that job description, in that person's specification, that really ignited my sort of passion for that role? And also about the organisation. What is it you like about organisation? Or what you know, how would your skills help that organisation reach its goals? So in the NHS, a lot of the time, it's service user. We're always thinking about putting our service users first. Everything we do relates to that service user. So think about that as well.
I think I want students to think about this as well. What about what Amanda said earlier? When you need to think about what strengths is this job looking for? What values is this company looking for? What behaviors are they after? You need to do that preparation before you get to the interview. You don't rock up to the interview and then go, oh, let me think of a situation that I've been in that is going to demonstrate my answers to this question. No, it's the research and the preparation that you do beforehand that is going to make you successful in an interview, because you really do need to think about how to approach it. It's like I always say, it's like your GCSEs or your A-levels. You don't just rock up to your GCSE exams or your A-level exams and go, right, well, I've done 2 years of study. Let's hope they ask me a question I know the answer to. No, you go back and you do your research, don't you? You look back in my day, before a GCSE or A-level, you go, well, what exam board is setting the paper? Which paper am I sitting? This exam board in the last 10 years, the most asked questions are these ones. So I'm going to revise those because they're likely to come up. And then I'll revise the other bits that I think are going to come up as well. So you've done your research beforehand and you do your preparation. Then you get into the exam and go, right, these questions are coming up. I thought they would. I've done my research on it. The interview is pretty much similar, isn't it, Amanda? Because we give, when you do interviews, like you said, you're nervous. I'm nervous as an interviewer. The interviewee is nervous, and we just want it to go well because we just want to make sure we get the right information out of a person. And isn't that why you always give those things like the job descriptions and the company values as hints to those applicants to say, go and read these, and it will give you an idea as to what the interview is going to be about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I was just thinking about as well is those competency-based interviews, the questions. So you can research that on the internet as well. So even if you were to put into a search engine competency-based questions, you'll have a whole raft of questions that come up, and that will really sort of help you think about you know, how you would sort of put your answer together to some of those questions. So again, using that STAR method, that STAR technique, and how you would answer that with your specific situations and your examples that you can bring to that. So that's sort of a lot of the preparation work that you can do as well. And again, and all of that helps you feel less nervous because you feel prepared going into that interview.
Whilst we've got, look, guys, you guys are here online and we've got Amanda and she's recruitment manager for the NHS. What questions would you ask her about potential interviews? What are you unsure about? What would you like to know? you have a great opportunity right here, right now in front of you. Some of you that have already expressed an interest of getting into the NHS, what would you like to know about interviews that you're not so certain about? And whilst you think about that, I have got an extra question. When we interview people, Amanda, and especially when we look at young people at the early career stage, we have different expectations to what we would have if I was interviewing somebody with 10, 15 years experience in the industry.
Yeah.
But I suppose this point is it's the same for everybody. Everybody gets nervous, but then does everybody answer every question correctly? And what happens if somebody gets a question wrong? What happens if somebody doesn't know the answer to one question?
So because we want to get the absolute best out of somebody, if you're nervous, you might not, be able to think about what your answer is, and you might feel like you're faltering on your response. Just take a breath. Just take a breath and think about it. And don't think, oh my gosh, they're going to be looking at me thinking I don't know what I'm doing. You do know what you're doing. You've done your preparation work. And that's why that is so, so important. Can't emphasize that enough. But yeah, because we all get nervous, just take a breath, and they won't, mark you down for that or anything. They will understand that you're nervous. And sometimes, if we do get somebody that's ultra nervous in front of us, we will do our absolute best to try and put them at ease. So, we'll always sort of start off the interview process with some basic questions about how are you? How did you get here today? What was your journey like if obviously you've had to travel from somewhere? So some really sort of questions to help sort of relax you, really.
Right, so we've got some questions. I've got one here from Miss Copper's class, which I don't think you can see actually, Amanda, it's on my direct, but other than the actual answers given, what else are you looking for when interviewing somebody?
So sort of good body language, good eye contact, to know that you're interested in that role that you're going for, that you've sort of thought about and you've prepared for that interview. You can think about how you want to present yourself as well. But that doesn't mean sort of dressing up in a shirt and tie anymore. That is so last year, the year before, 20 years ago. I think the business dress has become a lot more informal now, but just dress appropriately. So dress for the role that you're attending, that you're interviewing for. But yeah, so in the answers, we're looking for, as I mentioned before, we're not just looking for, what you've done. We're trying to understand, why you've done something, what your values, your behaviours are as well. And that will all sort of come through in the answer.
Brilliant. So think about that as well, guys. When we look at the interview and all of the things that you prepared beforehand, how you got there, what time did you arrive, how are you presenting yourself, your body language, are you genuinely interested, are you not? And remember, listen to what Amanda said. She said it a few times now, and it's true. You may be nervous, or you will be nervous. As an interviewer, we will do everything that we can to make you less nervous and to accommodate you, because trust me, we've taken the effort to invite you in because we want you there. We've seen something that we like, haven't we, Amanda? And we've looked at that CV and maybe done a telephone interview or maybe done a video interview, and you're like, I really want to meet this person to find out more. That's why they're there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, George has asked a question. You said earlier, when you said that we should ask about the organization's management, how would we phrase a question to do with that?
So I think about a question that I've asked before. So as if I was being interviewed by somebody who was going to be my manager, I'd ask them what their management style was like, how I would be managed by that person. So are they someone who likes to give you a lot of freedom? Are they someone who likes to sort of keep tabs on everything that you're doing? Because that, depending on who you are and what your style is, you need to know that you're going to work well and how you're going to work with that manager.
What other questions do we have, guys? Let's think about what other tips we can give. Now, we obviously, you covered at the beginning, Amanda, those things that you shared in terms of the job specs and the behaviors that you look for. Do they change a lot role to role?
I think in the care industry, we are looking at people who are compassionate, that are kind, that are caring. And I think if you look at our values, that tells you that from the start. And as I mentioned, that everything we do in our industry, we have the service user at the heart of that. So yes, we are absolutely, you know, even for me in my role, I'm in a corporate post, I work in human resources. I'm thinking about our service users in the decisions that I make in my role and how we recruit people. I'm always thinking about how does that have an impact on our service users. So that can be how quickly I can recruit somebody to a post, how quickly I can get them through all their pre-employment checks and stuff like that. Everything directly relates to our service users. So we are looking at people who have that mindset.
Absolutely. Rosie's asked a really good question. And we're going to work to link this to then coming on to the interview as well. What do you look for in a CV?
Yeah, so again, that relates back to the person specification. So sometimes, and that's why I sort of mentioned, because we do things slightly differently in the NHS, we don't always accept CVs as part of the application. So that's why we're looking for people to put forward in a supporting statement, which is part of the application process, their skills, knowledge and experience as part of that. So again, that's relating it back to the person specification again. But in terms of a CV, I mean, we're always sort of looking for people that have got the right experience and what you've been able to deliver in each of your roles. So not just about, you know, a bullet point of on a day-to-day basis, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. What have you achieved in each of those roles? So and that's why I think keeping a CPD log again is really important, because that will help you build your CV. That will help you answer some of those questions, those competency-based questions. So yeah, that would be my sort of top tip, really.
Because when we talk about CVs, there's always this debate about CVs and what goes on it. And I run sessions about CVs, and I try to get people, and especially young people, to understand, when you look at a CV, right, Amanda, you don't read it and then go, right, I'm going to give this person a job. It's more you read it and go, they're meeting the things that I'm looking for, and I'm actually quite interested in what they've done, and I want to explore this person further. So let me bring them in for an interview. So really, would you say the CV is to get somebody in for an interview? You want to read that, you're excited by the candidate. Yeah,
absolutely. So you're looking at, you know, what experience they've put down in that CV and how that relates to the role that you've been advertising and that they're interested in. And then absolutely, it is about sort of wanting to know more about that person, know more about their experience in sort of greater detail. So if there's like a bullet point in a CV that says, you know, I've done X, Y, Z, you want to know more about how they did it, why they did it. So getting into the sort of real detail of that person.
So really, we can start to link this as a journey. And for the students out there, it is a journey. And this is why we talk about the preparation beforehand. We mentioned it already, Amanda and I, about the preparation you do for an interview. Really, you're preparing yourself for applying for a job. And now you're starting to see how that CV will link to your interview. Because if you've done your research beforehand and you've looked at the competencies that they're after, the values of the company, the strengths that are needed within the job, you can then reference that in your CV, because obviously you would have the majority of them, and that's why you're interested in that role. And in your CV, you can start to write things that show, well, I can show you my team working by giving you this example. I can show you my compassion by giving you this example. It's a bullet point on a CV, which Amanda or I would then read and go, well, actually, I want to find out more about this person. And then when you come into the interview, your preparation should be looking at what you put on your CV and making sure that you've got the examples that you can expand on once you get into the interview, because guaranteed we'll look at that CV, and that's what we will use to build our interview with you. Well, I'll speak for myself. That's what I would use to build my interview with you, because I've read those examples and I want to explore them further. So give me examples, expand on it, tell me more about it. So your preparation should involve looking at your CV and realizing what you've written down and thinking, well, I'm probably going to be asked stuff about this, and let's make sure I know it. Okay. Does that make sense to you as well, Amanda? Would you do similar?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So don't put anything on your CV that you can't explain away. Because you'll get found out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I always say to students, don't go and do volunteering just to make it look good on your CV. Do volunteering because you're excited by it and you actually genuinely want to do it. I find I've interviewed people who have done volunteering and it's gone on their CV, and then when I ask them about it, the most disinterested face comes along because they weren't actually interested in it. It just looks good on their CV. Have you had that situation? How do you kind of react to that situation?
If I'm honest, no, I've not. But I suppose it's sort of yeah, it kind of it's for anything though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, if you've put something on your CV that you've not, or you try to respond to a competency-based question with an example that is part made up, the interviewer will probably be able to ask supplementary questions to try and pull more information out of you. Yeah, just be sort of really careful about you know, what you put on your CV, what you put in a job application, and make sure that you can always sort of back it up really with that experience. So again, that comes down to preparation. If you've done your solid preparation, then you'll be absolutely fine.
Comes back to the same thing. Listen to what Amanda just said. Make sure you've done your preparation. In my example, when I've spoken to people who have done volunteering, you can see that there's no interest in their eyes and the way they talk about it. Their energy changes. I want actually, I want you guys to think about, put some examples in the chat box of, tell me how it feels when you are talking about something that you enjoy. What's your energy like? And then when you talk about something that you don't actually enjoy but you had to do as a chore, what's your energy like? Give me examples in the chat box. Is it high? Is it low? Is it good? Is it bad? Think about it. So tell me about, you know, if I ask you to talk about something that you don't enjoy doing, what's your energy like? And then tell me what it feels like when you have to talk about something that you do enjoy doing. Okay, so Bethel's put, you'll show more enthusiasm if you enjoy it. And that's exactly the point that Amanda and I are making about when you're answering those questions, choose those competencies that excite you. Don't do volunteering just because it looks good on a CV, because it doesn't. If when I then ask you about the volunteering and you're like, yeah, well, I volunteered and it was great and it was fun and it was good for the community. Because to me, that's just, well, you've just done it to put on your CV. So yeah, so we've got lots of examples in. High energy if you enjoy it, and most likely to talk about it loads. Absolutely, you'll expand on it more. You feel really passionate and excited to share it. Absolutely. Low energy, showing little interest from Miss Copper's class. Absolutely. Yeah, you've got low energy. High when discussing something I'm passionate about, and if it's something you're not interested in, you become disinterested. And that's how we feel about it as well. So that's the point. Think about those things that excite you. And it make the interview go a lot easier for you, Amanda, when people talk to you about those competencies where you can see they're excited because of the comments those students have just put in, because they're expanding on it more. They're likely to talk more about it, right? Yeah, absolutely. And you'll be able to tell, this is sort of where body language comes into it as well.
You'll be able to tell from somebody's body language, and you know, whether they're looking at you or whether they're sort of looking away and they're like trying to, you know, sort of find the answers. So yeah, absolutely, all of that will come across to the person who's interviewing you.
Absolutely. We've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask you a question. I get asked this question a lot from students, and I have an answer for it. And I would like your opinion, Amanda. The students always ask me, what can I put on my CV that's going to make me stand out from everyone else? Is there anything that goes on the CV that makes one person stand out from a couple of thousand?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I think it is just about being really sort of succinct and putting across the best version of you and your experience. Be honest in that CV. You know, be honest about your experience, because you don't want to be sort of going into a situation where you're, you know, potentially going to falter. So yeah, just be honest with your experience. And if you didn't get that role, always ask for feedback. That's the other thing. So after an interview situation, if you didn't get the role, ask for feedback. And also, even when you did get the role, brilliant, fantastic, ask for feedback from your new manager, because that will really give you some sort of good pointers for future interviews as well, and will help you on your sort of career pathway.
And that's the thing. I always get asked by students, what's that one thing that's going to make me stand out from everybody else? I think you just heard it from Amanda. It's not, there isn't one thing that's going to make you stand out from thousands of others. That's not how it works. What makes you stand out is everybody is an individual, and everybody's CV is going to be different. And there's always going to be a slightly different example, but exactly what Amanda just said, make it exciting, make it interesting, be honest. The more honest you are, the more enthusiasm you put into your CV, the better it is going to come across. It sounds silly, but I've asked you, how do you feel when you talk about something that you enjoy? You'll give it high energy. Well, think about it. When you write about something that you enjoy, you're going to give it high energy and positive words. So make sure that those words go into your CV and give it some exciting energy, so that it's good. And when we read it, then we feel excited too, because it comes across. I know that sounds a bit weird, but trust me, it will come across. Don't look for that one thing that is the magic ingredient that's going to make you stand out from thousands of others, because you don't. No, it's not about standing out from the other thousands. It's just about showing you and being an individual. Who you are and the best version of you. And also, I think in preparation sometimes is ask some of your friends and ask some of your teachers and your peers and your colleagues, and even your parents, you know, about who you are. And get some feedback from them. What do I do well? And, you know, can you think of any examples that you can help me with that I could use sort of going into this situation? So, yeah, always look for help from others around you, people that can support you as well. Brilliant. Any last examples, any last tips that you'd want to share before we finish up? I think, yeah, just really the key to everything is preparation. Sounds a bit boring, but again, you know, it's going back to what Max was saying about, you know, your interest. It won't be boring if you're interested in that role, if you've got the enthusiasm, you know, for that organisation, you've done your research on that organisation, they sound like a brilliant organisation to work for, then it, you know, it will feel less of a chore. And also remember this as well, that once you've done a CV and once you've done a few interviews and you've done some preparation and you've done your notes and you've kept your log like Amanda suggested, you'll only need to add to it. It's the first time around that you do it that requires a lot of work, because you build the foundation, right, Amanda? And then absolutely. You just adapt it as you go forward in life, and you add certain things to your CV, which then means that you add certain things to your interview toolkit, because then you know what examples you're going to use as you go forward in life. You go, well, actually, it's a similar type of role, similar type of job. They're asking for similar things, and I've got these examples already. I have them in my toolkit, and you build it as you go along. So remember that the effort that you put in, I think we've said it enough, the effort that you put in to do the preparation, the better you're going to be once you get into the interview. And it's so easy to tell. Amanda, how easy is it to tell when you sit in front of somebody and you interview them, how easy is it to tell that they've done no preparation and they're just winging it?
Oh, so easy. Yeah, there's just those sort of little opening questions that I mentioned earlier about, you know, what interested you in the role? And if they're stuck at that stage, you know, they've done very little. Or if they, you know, if they come up with some very sort of stuff that's on the front page of our website, you know, they've not delved any deeper than the front page of our website. So absolutely go in and have a look at, you know, how we've structured our website, what we're advertising at the moment, and what is it that you like about that website, or what would you, you know, do differently on that website?
That goes back to that question that Miss Copper's class asked, which was, other than the actual answers given, what else are you looking for when interviewing? Exactly what Amanda just said is what we're looking for when interviewing, because you can see when somebody appears in front of you and you interview them and it's clear that they've done no preparation, how does that make you feel, Amanda, and what do you reckon their chances are?
Yeah, they're probably not going to score particularly highly in terms of their response. So other people who have done a lot of research on the website that are able to give a more in-depth answer, they will score more highly. So yeah, I probably just sort of didn't talk about the scoring mechanism that we use in the NHS. So we're sort of looking at, you know, whether somebody meets all of the sort of expectations, whether they partially meet it or whether there's no evidence. It's all about evidencing your experience, and that's how we sort of score applicants. So yeah, absolutely, if you've done a lot of research, then bring that to the fore and let them know that you've done your research. Don't be afraid of bringing that forward, and always think about how your experience as well relates to the job that you're applying for. So if you get that open question that says, you know, what skills can you bring to this role? Try and keep it succinct and make it relevant to the role that, you know, that you've applied for.
Absolutely. That's been some great advice. And I think we've heard some really good examples of what and how to prepare for an interview and what to do in an interview, and also the journey that gets you to that interview. And especially, it's been great to hear it from somebody who works as a recruitment manager within the industry and can give you those tips. And I hope that you guys, the students, you'll go away and think about this and put these into action. Listen to what Amanda said about those logs that you can keep and the preparation that you can do, the little things. Those little things that you can do will put you ahead of other people. And that's what will make you stand out from the other people. It's not that one magic thing. It's those little things put together that makes them stand out. So Amanda, thank you so much for your time this morning. You're welcome. Appreciate you coming along and answering questions and getting involved.
That's okay. You're welcome.
Thank
Good
you
luck,
very
everybody.
much. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Perfect. Lots of thank yous in the chat box as well. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to move on to the next session and we're going to look at some teamwork activity. We've got a new person who has joined us. That person is Claire. And we've also got a few new students, potentially teachers with classrooms that have joined. Let me know if you are a teacher with a classroom of students. Let me know if you're a student. But we do need to do the same thing again, guys. It's the Mentimeter. Rosie's got it ready in the background for us. Please scan that QR code or type in that thingy in the URL of your web browser, and you will
hey
be
Max,
able
do you
to
mind just sharing your screen so that we can see those?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would be useful. Thanks, Rosie. You can see that now, all right, guys? So remember, that's the QR code. That's the URL if you want it. But if you've got the QR code, you get your mobile phone out, just scan the picture with your camera, scan the QR code with your camera, and it should take you to the site. Remember to let us know once you've done it. I need to do it again as well, just to make sure. Remember, for this session, we're going into teamwork activity. And if you do have students in your classroom, we need them to get this done as well. Perfect. Everybody's 3 steps ahead of me, getting lots of dones in the chat box. Perfect. I think almost everyone is done. Appreciate Miss Copper's class may take a little bit more time, so I'm just going to give it another minute so that you guys can do it. But do keep letting me know once you guys have done it, let me know. And then once we're done, we're going to meet our new people. Okay, looks like pretty much everyone is done. Fantastic. Let me just make sure we have everything set. You guys can see the screen. I'm going to introduce Claire. I'm going to say welcome to Claire. Good morning.
Hi everybody, apologies for what. I am sitting in the shared office today, so a lot of people coming in and out, unfortunately.
No worries.
No.
I don't know if you're going to need to share your screen, but if you are, you're more than welcome to take it over from me whenever you want.
Please, yes. I will need to a bit later on.
Fantastic.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, what is the teamwork activity we're going to be doing?
Right, so the teamwork activity we thought we'd have a look at was a tea making. So it's going to be a step-by-step tea making activity. So what we would like people to do is really think about this activity and think about activity analysis. So activity analysis is the process of breaking down an activity into various steps and into quite detailed steps as well. So part of our role, part of the AHP role, is to look at people in the wider sense. So look at the skills that they have to do activities independently. So what we would really like people to think about is a team making activity and what it involves physically and mentally.
Split into rooms, and Rosie, I believe you're going to be splitting us into a couple of rooms. So let me know, Rosie, when you're ready and we can go into those rooms. So guys, sounds simple, but I'm assuming it's not going to be simple. Breaking it down step by step, tea making. Well, not simple for me because I make a disastrous cup of tea. If it was coffee, I'd be a bit more confident, but tea, not so sure. But that's what we're going to find out from you guys. So Rosie, just let me know when we're ready.
Great, perfect. So we are ready to go. Perfect. And then I'll share my screen so I can go ahead and kind of take the notes here on this slide. Can you guys all see it okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect. Let me just make sure I can have the chat box open as well. Looks like it just went away when I did that.
Yeah. Seems to be in the middle of the screen.
There we go. Thanks. And just let me make sure I have the breakout rooms open as well, just in case anyone kind of comes in during the session. Great, got it. Perfect. So can you guys all see this okay then?
Yeah, we can, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess we're asking the students to write in the chat, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the first thing that we will do here is students. So if you would go ahead and put in the chat box what you think the first step of making a cup of tea is. Anna, I'll give you guys a little bit more time so that you can discuss with your classroom kind of what that would be. And then, so we'll give you guys about 1 minute to think about it and put in the chat box what the first step would be.
So what do we need?
Get the equipment out.
Which is,
I see prepare all the things you need. So like the cup, the tea bag, the milk, the spoon, and the sugar. So great. So you guys, Rosie, you kind of mentioned the things that you would need to make the cup of tea. Could anyone think of anything else that you might need to put in there? And if not, then it sounds like the two people that have responded are on the same page so far. Here, I'll do. Great. So, preparing the equipment needed. Great. So can I just get a confirmation from Anna and Louisa? Do you guys agree that all of the equipment that we would need is a cup, tea bag, milk, spoon, and sugar? The kettle, yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
yeah. Water as well.
Yep, exactly. Great, perfect. So I'll put here, oh no, where did my one go? So what did we say you need? So we had a kettle, water,
A cup,
a
tea bag, milk,
milk, spoon,
sugar.
typo, and sugar. Great, perfect.
We need electricity, but yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We do need electricity. I don't know why that one's being funny. Perfect. So you guys, what is the next thing that you would need to do? So what do you think your next step would be in preparing a cup of tea? I'm just going to broadcast so that the other room can see here, just so you guys know we'll be in these rooms until 11:30. So we have quite a bit of time together to really go through the steps that it will take.
You could also unmute, isn't it, and speak for those of us who have a mic.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, if you do have a microphone, please, yeah, feel free to unmute. We'd love to kind of hear from you. And don't forget, this is also your chance to kind of be networking. You know, you joined today's session, and now's a really great time to kind of meet people in the profession that you're interested in. So definitely unmute if you are able to and kind of speak out loud. I see we have Anna is said to fill the kettle with water, and we have Louisa who said to start boiling the water. So I guess, which one do you guys think would go first in that? I think it's pretty obvious, but
Fill the kettle with water.
fill the kettle, yeah. So the second thing we will do is fill the kettle with water. Great. And then I think that Louisa, you were on track with the third step, which would be start boiling the water. Is that kind of what everyone would be doing then for this next step?
I'm sure it's plugged in, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
The electricity.
Perfect, great. So yeah,
Anna class said plug in and turn on. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, exactly. So that is the next step that you would do in making a cup of tea. So I think that this was kind of the easy part, these first 3 steps. So kind of moving on to step number 4. How would you do this? I know that this might be controversial. I know I'm American, but I have English parents, so I've been making tea my whole life as well. But I know that some people put the tea bag in first, some people maybe put the water in first. What do you guys do?
Mhm.
Put the tea bag in the cup. Rosie, I do the same. Tea bag in the cup. Most people say tea bag in the cup first. Yep, that's what pretty much everyone has said. So it looks like everyone's kind of on the same page, putting the tea bag in the cup. Great. So this may also be a controversial kind of topic for debate, but do all of you put sugar in your tea, or do all of you kind of drink it without? What's the majority, Anna, of your classroom saying, and how about the rest of you? And then would you put the sugar in while you're waiting for the water to boil, or would you wait until the end?
Wait till the end if we want sugar.
Wait until the end?
That's what I say.
Oh, it
Okay.
looks like Louisa agrees with that. Joseph looks like he doesn't use sugar. Rosie says sugar in last. Perfect. Okay, that might just be me because I don't use sugar in my tea, so I'm not actually sure when you would put it in. Great. So then what would the next step be after you put the tea bag in the cup? Oh, Anna's class says you put the tea bag in after, or the sugar in after the tea bag is taken out. So yeah, you guys, what would the next step be? Because it looks like, sounds like I'm kind of stuck here for what the next step would be.
No.
So Rosie, is that before or after you pour the water over? Oh, and I see Louisa says you could also say you need a bin and a fridge so that the milk is cold. And a bin for after you drain the tea bag. So yeah, that is definitely a good point. So how about we say electricity, bin, and fridge are kind of assumptions for what everyone would have. Would that be a good way to word this? Let me know if you guys agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So you guys, I'm not hearing from you except for Rosie, who said you would put the milk in the cup before you would put the water in the cup. So what would the next step be after putting the tea bag in the cup? And don't forget, we have about 12 minutes still. So this is a very in detailed kind of analysis of how we're making our cups of tea. Wait for the water to boil and then put the water in the cup.
Mm-hmm.
So I see, looks like 2 people are saying that you would do water next.
Yeah.
Kind of before milk, like Rosie said that she would put the milk in first. So let's go with what the majority says. And Miss Copper, sorry, I'll wait for your class to kind of have their input too. We'll give you guys about 1 minute to decide. Class says water in next. Great. So sorry, Rosie. It looks like you kind of lost this one. So the next thing that everyone is kind of saying is to put the water in next. So we'll put that as step number 5. Perfect. So put the water in the cup once boiled. So how about step number 6? So you have all your stuff prepared. You've boiled the water, you've put the tea bag and the water in the cup. You have a black cup of tea here. So yeah, by the sounds of it, it sounds like everything that would maybe be different depending on the person is what's going to happen now. So maybe put in the chat box what you put in your cups of tea so that we can kind of know where to go with the next few steps. We'll give you guys about 20-30 seconds to put that in the chat box. What do you put in your cup of tea? So I personally just drink it with milk. Marlena, what do you do? Marlena?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, I wrote in the chat, brew for 2 minutes and then take it out.
Yep.
The tea bag, that is.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, I see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I see it in the chat box now. So I see Rosie says the same, let the tea brew. And then take the tea bag out. Anna says take the tea bag out and then add sugar. And Louisa, did you agree with Rosie or Miss Copper?
Yeah, I think Rosie, yeah.
Rosie?
Yeah.
Perfect. So next step, it sounds like everyone is going to let the tea brew before you kind of put anything in. So I'll go ahead and put that, let the tea brew for, I'll put about 2 minutes. Great. And then I see Mrs. Copper said to add sugar. For those of you who do take sugar, do you put it in before or after you put the milk in?
Sugar is last.
Sugar's last.
For me, yeah.
Marlena?
Yeah.
Great. Can we get anyone else to add to that? Because now we have 1 against 1. So sugar in first or milk in first? Ms. Copper said sugar first. Louisa says sugar first while water is hot. Rosie says milk in first. So now we're 2 against 2. I think Joseph said that he doesn't use sugar.
Yeah. So
Great.
we're making 2 cups of tea, not 1 today.
Neva, Belinda, do you guys have any kind of comments on this one? No?
Half Belinda, half naive.
Great. It sounds like we're 2 against 2. So I can kind of put in here that we had, 2 against 2. So 50% say sugar in next. Oops, spelled sugar wrong. 50% say milk in next. Some don't use sugar. Great. So, okay, let's say your milk and your sugar is in, or just your milk if you don't use sugar. What is the next step to this? So,
Oh, we didn't say take out the tea bag.
yeah, I just noticed that actually. Thanks. Thank you. Take out the tea bag and great. So great. Sorry about that. So your tea bag is out, your milk or sugar is in. Some don't use sugar. I see we have a couple people that say next step is to mix it. Actually, that's what everyone's saying.
Yes.
So yep, perfect. Mix the drink. Great. Any steps after this, you guys?
Usually for me, when you take out the tea bag and you do put the milk in, sometimes I put a little bit more hot water after that. I don't know why, but tend to.
Okay. Does anyone else do that? Does anyone else put in more hot water after everything is taken out?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I've got
Joseph
company.
Oh, perfect. Here, I'll put an optional 10th step. Great. So I see Louisa said the next step after that is to put the spoon in the sink and put the milk away. Everyone agree on that? Or is there kind of anything you do in between mixing the drink and doing that?
No, sounds like the next plan.
Great. Great. Any more steps, you guys? Or can you now kind of walk away and have your cup of tea? Drink?
Yeah.
I know this is like the most exhausting cup of tea I've ever made.
Oh, yeah.
Next step is to get a biscuit. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll
I
put
like
this in
this
optional
cup.
step.
Yeah, it is a must.
Oh, great. Then I actually won't make it an optional step. Grab a biscuit. Perfect. And then are we ready to have our cup of tea?
Yeah, I think so. Some people will unplug the kettle. I know a couple of people do that. Older people tend to unplug.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll add that then. Perfect. And then 14 is enjoy your cup of tea. I'm just going to broadcast to the other room, you guys, that we have 5 minutes left in these rooms, just so that they kind of know. Perfect. Great. So these are our steps. So we have 14 steps in making a cup of tea. I'll read them out loud, and everyone tell me if you kind of disagree or want to add in anything anywhere. So first step, prepare what you need. So kettle, water, a cup, milk, spoon, sugar. Assume that you have electricity, bin, and fridge. And I see that we say assume sink too. So that is perfect. So then we'll fill the kettle with water. We'll make sure the kettle is plugged in and start the kettle. We'll put the tea bag in the cup. We'll put the water in the cup once it's boiled. We will let the tea brew for about 2 minutes. Take the tea bag out and bin it. 50% say to put your sugar in next, 50% say to put your milk in next, and some of us don't use sugar, so kind of in whatever order you would like, we would do those things. You'll mix the drink. Optional, you'll put in more hot water, you'll put the spoon in the sink and put the milk away, grab a biscuit, unplug the kettle, and enjoy. So is there anything, any kind of steps that we missed, anything that you guys want to add, anything like that? Great, it doesn't sound like it. So you guys, we're going to go in the main room in about 3 minutes to kind of share the process of how we did this. So why do you guys think that this kind of activity, how do you think that it could impact you in maybe an application, an assessment center, in a future job that you may have? Oh, great, Joseph says he uses honey sometimes. Perfect, I can say, perfect. So yeah, how do you guys...
Sorry, Rosie. Where's sugar? Say, and or honey? Maybe.
Oh, great, thank you.
At the top. No, sorry, at the top. Yeah.
Oh, right, thank you.
Yeah, where it says sugar. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys kind of how you think that this could, an activity like this could help you in your future, how you might use an activity like this when you're in a role. I know that I personally am an events manager, and I have to work with a team all the time. And, you know, there's some things that we maybe would do things differently on, or, you know, we might do things in a different order, but we have to work together to make sure that the final result is what we need to do. So I see that Louisa said it shows that you can put your ideas together with others to create an all-around plan. Yeah, absolutely. Joseph says that, yeah, this is great teamwork building. Rosie says you have to think about every step separately and outline everything you're doing. So I think that that really goes back to communication and why communicating with each other is so important. And that'll be important in any role that you do. So whether you want to go into healthcare, whether you want to, you know, do anything else, you'll always have to communicate in your role. Great, so it is 11:29. I'm going to close the rooms in just a minute here. And we're going to go back and share kind of what we talked about. Is there anyone that would like to unmute themselves in the main room and kind of walk everyone through our breakout room? It would be great if you could. And like I said, it really, this is your opportunity to network and stand out to potential future employers, you guys. So if any part of you wants to unmute yourselves and share these in the main room, then you definitely should. And I'll go ahead and close the room, so it'll give us about 30 seconds. If not, Marlena, Belinda, or Neve, would any of you guys like to share, or do you want me to go ahead and do it?
I'm easy either way. Neve or Melina, like to? Yeah, I'm happy to as well, whatever's easiest for everyone else.
Perfect. Great. Then
Looks like-
Eve and Belinda, do you guys kind of want to tag team it?
Yeah, of course.
I do the
Perfect.
first half, Neve, and you do the second half.
Let's do it, yes.
Great. Okay, we're gonna get kicked out of this room in 5 seconds. See you guys in the main room.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thanks.
I want you to think about what we require physically to make a cup of tea. So the physical demands of that task. So for example, strength, coordination, and so on and so forth. The cognitive demands of the task. So for example, attention and concentration, and thinking and planning. And then think a little bit about the personal demands of the task, so communicating, finding out maybe what your friend or that service user, wants in their tea. How do they want that tea made? And then the intrapersonal demands of the task. So, risk-taking, judgment, autonomy, responsibility. So just have a little think, step by step, of what we would need to do in order to successfully make that cup of tea or coffee.
Have a think, guys. So think about that. There's a lot more to making a cup of tea than I thought there was. So what kind of process are we going to go through? What kind of strengths and what kind of motor skills are we going to use? What kind of thought processes do we need to go through? What kind of risks are we going to take, if any? So yeah, I'm going to be taking notes on a slide. So obviously I want you guys to be starting to think about it and put stuff in the chat box. So let's go put stuff in the chat box, or if you want to come on microphone and off mute, let me know and then we can talk it. And then I'm going to be taking notes, as he said, and then try and organize them at the end. Probably going to be a lot more to this than we realize.
Yeah, and think about the steps as well. So think about, what order you might like to do things in, and what order somebody else might like to do things in. For making a cup of tea, some people may go straight from kettle to cup. Some people may use a teapot. So there's quite a lot of things to consider.
Good point. I'll give you guys a minute or two to think, and then when you're ready, start putting stuff in the chat box or start explaining, because I appreciate that whilst I talk at you, you can't think as much. Okay, we're starting to get some stuff in the chat box. I'm going to leave it a minute so we can see what else we get. Just to let you know, we've got a total of 20 minutes in this room. Like I said, I'm going to make notes on a slide and we're going to then reorder it before we go back into the main room. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's some really good comments coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's have a look. I'm going to make some notes on a slide. So we got motor skills, cognitive capabilities. Making sure you got all the equipment ready. What kind of equipment? So we got kettle, cups, tea. Might need water. What else we got? So we're in this room until 11:30. Okay, there's burn risks.
Yeah.
And what else? Burn risks.
Think of the think of the person and maybe their physical ability as well. No, what risk could there be physically?
You say what risks there could be physically?
Yeah,
Yeah.
physically, what risk there could be. So you could have any age person here. You know, you could be working with an adult, but you could be working with an older person. Could be working with somebody with a stroke. You could be working with somebody with dementia. So there's lots of things.
They may need somebody's put Kate has put may need additional aids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we've got communication is important. Some people like their tea made in a certain way. Bethel, I think you can remove to some people. In my experience, everybody likes their tea made in a certain way, and it's a disaster for me because I'm really no good at making tea. I always get it wrong. Everybody thinks coffee's difficult. It's not. Coffee I can do with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
Although that's a risk.
It's getting the right strength. Everyone likes a different strength of more milk or less milk or
Put the water in first, then the tea bag. No, put the tea bag in first, then the water. But then take the tea bag out after a minute, but don't squeeze it, or leave it in for 5 minutes and squeeze it, and then add the milk, or put the milk in before you've taken the tea bag. I get lost. I used to do the tea and coffee runs. No.
Or it's some people will say, "Oh, I quite like a herbal tea," and then that throws you completely off as well.
Then we're into a whole new ball game. I used to work in the hospitality industry in Pret, so I worked in Starbucks, and sometimes you meet people. I would employ people who were from different cultures and didn't know much about green tea or herbal teas. Customers like, "I'll have a green tea, please," and they'd always ask, "Would you like milk in that?" Everybody look and go, "No, not in a green tea."
Yeah.
Right. So what else have we got? Communicating at a pace and using language the person can understand. You may need to use objects of reference. Sign language. Oh, I love it.
Excellent.
Okay. So this tea making is way more
Order,
complicated
if
than I
you're
thought.
assessing somebody doing this task, what order would you expect the task to be in? So what steps would you be looking at?
Oh, come on, guys, put it in the chat box for us. What steps? Oh, come on microphone, come off mute. What steps? Let's get the steps down to making a cup of tea. It sounds like this should be a 2-second job, but I fear there's more steps than I realized to this.
There's always more than you realise to assessment. Even to making simplest of things, but there's so much going on.
Yeah, this is what worries me with this one. It looks like this should be so simple, but I'm gonna guess that it's not.
It's not as straightforward as you think. It goes to show that we all take things for granted, don't we? So when we're able and we can do, you don't think anything about making your heart drink. But when you can't do these things, or maybe you've got dementia, so you've got a cognitive impairment there, and so your ability to sequence is impaired, and that makes it really difficult.
Well, I can see holes in these examples already. Not to be pedantic, but we've got tea bag, water, milk, sugar. Yeah, okay, Bethel, that's a good start. Georgia's boiling the kettle and then getting everything out, like the milk, and putting the tea bag in, pour the water, leave it, take the bag out, put the milk in. Oh, you're one. Yeah, okay, you're one of those people that likes it that way. No, but Georgia, I'm gonna ask you a question. When you go to boil the kettle, what do you need to do before you boil the kettle?
Well done, Elsie. That's really good. Ask who you're making the cup of tea for. Brilliant, great start.
Yeah, I love it. Check the
Yeah.
Check someone like
Yeah.
I mean, Georgia, you've got a great excuse. You never make the tea. Okay. Yeah, but you're like me. But Georgia, if you go to boil the kettle, what do you need to do to the kettle before you boil it? Bang on. Put water in.
Absolutely.
Okay. So hang on a second. Oh, I'm trying to get this down in notes here. We've got another 11 minutes. Yeah, we're going to 11:30. So we've got another 11 minutes to get this process done.
So the next thing is, what type of kettle have you got? So you can't take it for granted that everyone's just got an electric kettle that you plug in and you switch on. So what type of kettle have you got there? What might that person or you need to do? Yeah, brilliant, Kate. Great comment. We definitely need to think about that. And for a few reasons, we need to think about how much water. So it may be exactly that they may not have the strength to lift the kettle, or it may be that they're only making 2 cups of tea, so they don't need to fill it all the way up to the top. So yeah, really good comment there.
And it saves energy, but I like the fact that you're
thinking about,
yeah, so does somebody have the strength? I suppose you guys
exactly.
are relating that back to what Claire said earlier. You mentioned about, is it somebody who's had a stroke potentially?
Exactly, yeah. You might be working with somebody with the use of only one arm. And so again, you're back to, yeah, exactly. How heavy is that kettle? How are they going to pour that? Thinking about your aids and your adaptations.
I'm trying to get all these notes down. Here we are. Let's have a look. Right. This is good stuff, guys.
Yeah, it's really good.
There's more than 2 steps to making a cup of tea. There we are.
What's really nice about this activity is actually you get to know the person you're working with really well. So you get to see them doing something that's, most people will enjoy a hot drink of some sort, and then you make it, they make it, you make it alongside them, and then it's sociable, so you can sit down and really start to get to know that person. So not only are you doing your assessment, but you're building up that rapport with them as well.
So is this where we're starting to build a real picture of occupational therapy?
It is, yeah.
These are the kind of steps that you go through when you're looking after people and how to adapt their situations. Okay, now I'm getting it. Those of you that were here yesterday and heard the OT speaking, and now you're here today, hopefully you're connecting the dots. You've probably connected the dots already. I think I'm just way behind everybody else. Okay, so, but then, okay, I've got a question. Some people might boil the water on the stove. Is there more risk attached to that?
Shall I automatically answer that one, or shall I let people have a little thing?
Let's have a look what they say.
Yeah.
Safir.
And it's also, this ties to be physiotherapy as well. We're talking about AHPs, but you've got to consider, people's physical strength, their standing tolerance, their coordination. So we will often get activities like this will often see referrals onto other professions as well. Yeah, absolutely. Fire risk, burns, lovely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And could fall on the person. Absolutely, Satchel.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other risk to this, and I wouldn't expect, you know, everybody to think about it in such a broad way, but the other risk to that is if you have got somebody with dementia, obviously with dementia you get memory loss. So if the kettle is on the stove rather than an electric kettle, I've had people where they've forgotten it completely. And even though the noise will be going off, that whistle will be going off, they'll be going, well, what's that? I don't know what that is. So we have to be really careful and considered.
A lot to consider. I must say,
Brilliant.
yep, so Alfie's put consider if the person has any
Yeah,
physical or cognitive impairments. Yeah, brilliant. I was just about to say, many years ago, I broke my wrist and my elbow on my left arm, and I was in a plaster cast. Don't know if you guys can see this, but I was in a plaster cast from my shoulder all the way down to my wrist. And my wrist was bent like that, so I couldn't hold it straight, and I couldn't get my arm near my body because I couldn't bend my elbow. And I had to cook my own lunches until I realized I couldn't cook my own lunch because I couldn't drain my own pan of pasta. That sounds really silly. I was 23, 24, maybe 26 years old. It was silly. I didn't think about it. And yeah, I went to make pasta, filled up the pan, managed to get it onto the stove. And then I realized afterwards I needed to go and drain the pasta, but I couldn't because I couldn't lift up with two hands. I only had one. I was stuck. Don't think of these things until you're in that situation. So I suppose this is exactly the point. When you guys are talking about those people with physical impairments, it's exactly what you're talking about, right, Alfie? Wow, okay.
Alfie, you make a good OT. I like the comments. You make a good OT, I think. So in talking about steps, what else do they have to do? They have to fill up the kettle, they have to find the milk and the sugar and the tea bags, which I think I read earlier, one of you commented on that. But in order to do that, we've got to think, are they in a familiar environment? Do they know? Are they orientated to the room? Do they know the layout of this kitchen? So do they automatically know where to look? And then you're looking at problem solving, because if they're not familiar with the environment, what most people will do will, you know, open various cupboards, higher or lower, and have a look at what's in that cupboard. And then it's about, do they recognise what they need? Do they remember what they need? All of these things sound really simple until you've got some sort of an impairment, and then they're a lot harder. Absolutely, visual impairments, definitely. Definitely.
Wow, okay.
What do you think they might do if they had a visual impairment? Yeah, absolutely. Could potentially trip, you know, could burn themselves, could hurt themselves. So it's really important that they're orientated to their environment and they know where they are. Yeah. So the other things that we might look at as well, so we've put the kettle on, we've got a tea bag in, we've got a sugar, we've got milk ready to go, we've got a spoon ready to stir it, take the tea bag out. So the other thing that we need to consider is whether or not, you know, does the person remember who they're making the tea for, what, you know, how many spoons of sugar they've asked for, but do they recognise when that kettle has stopped boiling? So what do they do You know, is it a noise that they recognise? Is it a light that's gone off on the kettle? So it's really important that they recognise when that is finished boiling.
Okay, all right. I've got a question for you. Visually impaired person or a blind person, there must be a way that they know. Well, if you're using it, hopefully they'd be using an electric kettle, but then how do they know how much water to put in? But then how do they, okay, I'm going to ask a really dumb question. How are they going to know where the cup is to pour the water into the cup? Because obviously you're using hot water, so you don't want to be using touch.
Absolutely. No, absolutely not silly at all. So depends what environment they're in. Normally people who are visually impaired, if they're at home, they're going to know their home very well. So they're going to know where cups are, kettles are, and things like that. What we do to aid this is, I mean, normally people will be very used to compensating for that particular impairment, but what we do to aid this is we can give people equipment like liquid level indicators. So when you pop the liquid level indicator either into a saucepan or into a cup, and it reads the level and it reads the temperature. So if you're boiling something, it will make a noise, a sound, loud enough to alert that person. If you're using a liquid level indicator in a cup, it will make a noise when you've reached 3/4 of the way up the cup, and then that means that person can stop pouring the water.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's really a lot of equipment and aids out there. I was going to say as well, if you're having difficulty, lifting your kettle or pouring your kettle, there's kettle tippers that you can use. So you pop your kettle onto, quite hard to describe, but it's like a little tipping mechanism, and you strap it in, and it will literally, it's like a rocker.
Okay.
And it will literally tip for you, so you don't have to use any strength or any effort.
Right.
So there's always ways around.
Guys, we've got about 20 seconds before we go back into the main room. And I think I've got here about 30 steps. It must not be that many.
Yeah, there are. There's lots more than you think.
Wow. And then are we going to dissect this when we get back into the room?
We certainly are, yeah. Thank you.
Main room, I have to say that I'm not great at making a cup of tea, and I think I'm going to steer clear of it from now on, considering how many steps that one takes. I'll stick to coffee. But we did make some valid points. I have to say that we had to negotiate who likes their tea how. You've got to communicate with the person. Tea bag first, tea bag second, milk first, milk before the tea bag's out, milk in. I mean, stick to coffee. I'm a lot better at that one. Right. So I was taking notes in my room. I don't know if Rosie, you were taking notes in your room. Hopefully you were. But Claire, help us out then. How are we breaking this down?
It's interesting, isn't it? There's always far more steps to an activity than you think you are, particularly when you're assessing somebody's needs. And what our lovely Belinda here has done for us is she's done a bit of activity analysis. So we thought we'd talk it through with you. Is that okay, Belinda?
Yes. So we use something called, as Claire says, called the activity analysis, or an occupational analysis, which really helps us break things down in quite a minute way with different categories. So I've got a blank form in front of me, and it begins with the context. So the context represents the circumstances where an activity takes place. It includes physical, social, cultural, personal, temporal dimensions. So that's a good place to start. So the physical environment, and how does this impact on the activity? And our group certainly mentioned that get your equipment together first. So presuming you've got fridge, taps, sink, work surface. I noticed our team didn't mention, that's quite important. So yeah, that's the place to start, isn't it, Claire?
It is. And making sure if you're in a ward environment, just making sure that the room is clear of trip hazards. It's, you've got everything you need before you start. So you've got your milk in the fridge that's in date. You've got tea bags, a choice. You've got sugar in there. It's all the simple things. And if they're not in a place that's obvious, if you like to find, to make it fairer on the person who's in an unfamiliar environment, just move things around a bit so they seem more logical. So it's a bit easier in that respect.
Shall we go to the next category in the activity analysis, Claire?
Yeah.
So our format suggests we then go on to sequential stages, where a table is provided to help us identify again what equipment and setup are needed. So it's a bit of a crossover there, but then the specific steps and sequence and steps of the activity and any other planning considerations. So yes, the very first category, tools. And our team listed the basic necessities, the tea bag, milk, sugar or honey, etc. And then the sequential steps in order and also timing considerations. How long will these things take? Other planning considerations, is there space to carry out the activity safely? How is the light? Is it light enough for the person to see? Is there a lot of background noise that might complicate matters? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is the room ventilated or the area ventilated? So we have to think of all these things. We then the analysis is then broken down into motor skills. So something we didn't think of in our little groups, to what extent mobility is needed for this activity, postural control, strength needed, the need to have fluid or smooth body movements, and also something we call proprioception, which is how we know where we are in space, something that most of us take for granted. And range of movement necessary during this activity from top to toe, really.
Yeah, so we're looking at coordination, aren't we? And fine motor movement, speed and strength. So, for example, if you've got somebody who maybe has Parkinson's or a tremor, how are they managing carrying that kettle, putting it up, or because if it's shaking like this, thinking about, right, how can we make that person safe to do this so that they remain independent in these tasks? So how do we do this?
We did, I have to say that we did think about, I can't remember who it was that came up with it, but we talked about when you put the water in the kettle, does the person have enough strength to lift the full kettle? I wouldn't have thought that, but they came up with that. So what strength do they have? And also, can they use both hands? Do they have the ability to use both arms or not? Can they stand for a long period of time or even for a short period of time? How close can they get to the counter? These are all things that that we were talking about.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
And if you know this person as well, before you're doing your assessment, you can think about what are the things you need environmentally. So you might need a chair in the room if there's that one in there already. Think about these compensatory techniques. It might be that that person doesn't have the strength to lift the kettle, so they would problem solve and reason that actually they're not going to fill the kettle right to the top, they'll fill it a quarter of the way or half the way to compensate for that. So it meets their strength.
So the next category in the activity analysis is process skills. So this includes thinking, planning. So we were all able as a group to plan. We took quite a while planning, reasoning, problem solving, and all these this part of the activity needs attention, concentration, memory, understanding, organisation, judgment, concept formation. So we were really thinking very hard about this activity together. So at what extent does this activity require attention? There's the potential to burn yourself with the boiling water. And to what extent does the activity need sustained concentration? You could say quite a lot to make a decent cuppa. Anything to add on that section, Claire, or shall I move on to?
I think that's really good, and it is quite rightly. It is about their level of attention, their concentration, their temporal awareness when they're doing this task. You know, the abstract thinking. You've got to be thinking ahead when you're making a cup of tea. You've got to be thinking. You know, when you stand and make tea, it's actually very quick. So you need to be able to problem solve quite quickly. You need to be thinking ahead. You know, about. Right now, I've got my tea bag, my sugar in my cup, my kettle's on. Let me go get the milk. Let's get a spoon out. You know, it's a very busy task, so you're thinking about a lot that's going on. You need to be able to. Well, we look and see whether people can read. So you need to be able to look at the milk and know whether or not that's in date. You know, if somebody you're working with has some sort of an allergy, you know, they need to be able to recognise that allergy and what they need to. So they might be using soya milk. So if you've got soya milk and, you know, your cow's milk in the fridge, are they going and getting the right milk? Are they diabetic? Do they need sweetener instead of sugar? So it's all of these things that people really need to problem solve, think about, remember to ask if they're making it or you're making it for somebody else. Remember to ask and find out these things. And and also memory, because if you've got no memory and you're trying to make tea for yourself or somebody else, it's actually really, really difficult to remember all those steps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Again, coming within some of the aspects that Claire's mentioned, your senses, how sharp your senses are, and in fact, talking about the different types of milk. Is the milk fresh, or does it smell? You know, your sense of smell might tell you that milk's sour, it's gone off. Is there a need to discriminate between different smells in this activity? Vestibular, how important is balance? I'd have thought pretty important.
Yeah.
Filtering out, especially in a ward environment, being able to filter out background noises so you can concentrate on what you're doing, or how do you know the kettle has switched off? All sorts of things that we just take for granted can be really challenging for somebody who's having this assessment, which could be quite stressful in itself. And there's another category, interpersonal skills. So how important are interpersonal skills when making a cup of tea?
Well, we got it down as very important. I have to say that, because that was one of the top things that we came out with, was you need to communicate with the person to find out how they want their tea.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So that was a big one, because you can't just go and make a cup of tea without knowing what you're going to, like, do they want milk? Do they want sugar? Do
Yeah.
they need it?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Yes. Who are you making the cup of tea for? If it's yourself, then you presumably know, but that's a really good point. And to what extent is interaction necessary? When does it happen? Is there a need to position your body in relation to others? Make sure you've got enough space around you. I'm trying to think if there are any other factors, any other categories. Self-control, coping skills, risk-taking. So I suppose, how full do you fill the kettle? Again, going back to keeping the activity safe. And then, of course, there's the cultural aspect, Claire, isn't there, Neve? Is it appropriate to ask somebody to make a cup of tea or coffee? Do they like tea or coffee? Or is it not something that they've been brought up with, they don't do? Is there another way of assessing someone? So yeah, the activity analysis definitely helps us really break the activity down even more and think about other factors.
Now, I think there are so many components to activity analysis that you almost take it for granted. All the skills that are needed to do this task, you don't think about them unless there is a problem there. You know, you don't ever think, you know, really think about, if you want a tea or a coffee, you just go in the kitchen and make it. You don't ever think that, oh, that might cause me a difficulty or a problem, until you're in that situation. Like you've only got the use of one arm, or, you know, you've got dementia and you can't quite remember, you know, why am I in here? Why am I in the kitchen? What am I doing? Oh, I was making tea. Am I making it just for me, for somebody else as well? So there's so many things to consider. And then you've got the risk elements as well. And even when we talk about the environment, if you're in somebody's home making tea, it's looking at, you know, where do they make their tea? Are their workbenches clear? You know, are they likely to spill any boiling water anywhere? Have they got the space to manoeuvre in that kitchen? Because I've been on home visits where people have had a lot of clutter, and it's been really difficult to actually move around their environment. So that increases the risk of falls. You know, if you've got a kettle boiling, you dread to think, don't you? So it's also looking at, are they safe in that sort of respect? You know, what if they were boiling a kettle on a hob? Do they have a smoke alarm in situ, so that if they forgot about that kettle, at some point they will be alerted in some other way? So it's just considering all these things that go on when you're doing any task, but which is tea making, as it's a relatively simple task in terms of steps. And we'd be looking at similar things. We do personal care assessments. You know, physiotherapy do lots of balance assessments, mobility assessments. We're looking at aids and equipment that could help prolong this person's independence. So it really depends. And we touched a bit on the equipment and tea making. So we said, you know, somebody finds it hard to maybe carry a kettle, for example. We said about not filling the kettle up, as you know, to the top, filling it halfway, making it lighter. The other thing that you could suggest is either using a jug or a cup to, you know, fill up your cup at the sink, pour it into the kettle.
Oh, yes.
For some people, that's, you know, much easier to do. We spoke about kettle tippers. So that's a piece of equipment that just rocks backwards and forwards, so you're not having to lift your kettle. And also, if you've got a tremor, you're taking away that risk of burning yourself. So you're just tipping. And some people, there may be, you know, if you've had a stroke and you can't use your spoon to get your tea bag out or squeeze that tea bag against the side of the cup, you could have tea bag strainers. So they're like tongs, so little tongs where you're picking up that tea bag, giving it a squeeze, taking it out the cup. And we also spoke about liquid level indicators. So somebody has a visual impairment, and you know they're having to work out, you know, they're pouring water and needing to work out where it is in that cup. You have these little liquid level indicators, and it will beep. So when you've got your cup 3/4 of the way full with water, it'll beep for you, make a noise, and that's how somebody knows to stop pouring. So there's lots of things to consider here.
I want to ask a question, because when you think about this, so we've just gone through this process and there's actually a lot more to a simple task like making a cup of tea. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my head, okay, because you're explaining to us the different things that we have to consider. But if I was, let's say I was born with a disability, or I only had the use of one arm, or I was blind, would I not learn this as I get older? But then it did obviously occur to me that you just mentioned somebody who has a stroke. So we're talking about people who wouldn't know what to do because they've spent their adult life never having to consider this. So is that why you do this?
That is why we do it, yeah. So if you're born with an impairment, yes, normally you'll learn how to compensate for that independently. But usually if you have an impairment, you know, later on down the line, you're just not used to using these compensatory techniques. And so you need to almost relearn your task. And that's where we step in, you know, as both physios, as occupational therapists, even as, you know, as music therapy, art therapy, drama therapy, we're pulling out different skills in people. So, and we all work towards the same thing, which is enabling that person, getting them as independent as possible. And whether that is, you know, doing that through provision of equipment, helping that person to relearn a task, putting a care package into somebody's home to help them remain as independent for as long as possible. There's various possibilities, but all our assessments are geared towards how can we, you know, maintain this person's independence for as long as possible. But there's just so many more things to consider than you think there are when you're assessing somebody. So although it sounds like a simple task, it's not, it's a lot more complex, but it's really interesting. And it's really interesting working with HPs can work over a variety of settings. So you could be working with children, adults, older people. You could be working in a hospital, in the community, in care homes, in social services, in learning difficulty. There's so much scope for HP roles and what we do within those roles. So it's really interesting looking at people in this way.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask a question to the students. Now, you've gone through the exercise and you've done it. Tell me what surprised you about it and what questions do you have about it? Because we've got about 7-8 minutes before we break for lunch and finish this session. So what surprised you about this task? And also, what questions do you have about what we've just done and what we've just been through? Guess it's stuff in the chat box.
I was wondering, Claire, are you still showing the video? Or no?
Yeah, I've got a very short video. Yeah, so it's only about 4 minutes long. So yeah.
4 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I am.
So from Miss Copper's class, we've got a couple of suggestions already that how many different ways people would carry out the same task surprised us. Absolutely. Yeah. I suppose we don't think of that because we know our way, right? Not realizing how making tea could be different from person to person due to their abilities. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And I think that's the thing that's kind of not surprised me, but opened my eyes the most about how many different ways that this can be done, but also you take for granted the way that you do it, but then you don't take into consideration different abilities from different people and what barriers they might have and how they overcome them or how they do it their way, in a safe way, in a communicative way. Brilliant. And Georgia, but how many different pieces of equipment we can use to help people? Yeah, that's really valid. Because when you were explaining the different things that you can use, I suppose, again, it's to that point, isn't it, that I wouldn't know that these exist because I've never had to use them.
No, exactly.
But you guys would have to know this because you need to ensure that people can go forward learning how to do this stuff in a new way. And that's why I suppose that's why your role is so important, because you become really integral into making somebody live a full life again, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Okay, cool. Brilliant. Guys, keep putting stuff in the chat box for me. Claire, you have got a video, haven't you?
I have got a short video.
Are you going to share your screen or do you want to send me?
Let me see if I can.
Go for it.
Right, it's this one here. Can we all see that?
Yep.
Lovely.
Hi, I'm Lucy Gordon, Occupational Therapist. Today I'm going to demonstrate example of
Can you hear it?
Not fully. It's a little bit. Go back to the beginning again, and I'm just going to make a change to the setting.
Hi, I'm Lucy Gordon.
Pause it.
Try and play it again now. No, I can't hear it. When you go to, actually, Claire, you know, when you shared your screen, there's an option that says share sound. So if you go to your view options, it should say share sound at the top.
Okay, is that all right? That's fine. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave you to it.
Right, I've got that. Is that any good?
Perhaps go back to the beginning. So.
Can you hear that?
Go back to the beginning and let's see if we can hear it from there.
Hi, I'm Lucy Gordon, Occupational Therapist, and today I'm going to demonstrate to you an example of a kitchen assessment that I might do with a patient within their own home, or maybe that an occupational therapist might do within a hospital. It's just to show you the sort of things that we're assessing and what we're looking at, those motor and process skills. There's actually a lot more to a kitchen assessment. Today we're going to be looking at making a hot drink. Hi Ree, how are you feeling today? Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. So following on from our assessment this morning, you identified that it's something that's really important to you is having a cup of tea with friends at home. Yeah. So I thought maybe that we could do a little assessment just to see how you manage with making a cup of tea. Okay. Is that all right? That's fine. Yeah. So I'm just going to leave you to it, and you get on and make a cup of tea how you normally would, if that's all right. Okay. Okay. Get the mug. And get the tea bag. Spoon. It's not a teaspoon in there, so I'll use this. Oh, so you've already got the kettle? Yeah. How do you normally like to have your tea, Ray? Just with milk. So I'll get the milk out. Have your way. Don't make it too strong. Is this quite similar to your setup at home?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. Oh, pretty much the same. That's good.
Oh, that looks like a lovely cup of tea.
And then I'll just go behind it.
Oh,
Like so.
oh.
Okay,
That's great.
can I have it now?
Of course you can. So how are you feeling? How do you feel compared to being here today? How is it normally than when you're at home? How do you feel making a cup of tea?
I feel okay making a cup of tea, but I am tired now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Do you think that's because you've been standing up for a while?
Yeah, I'm not used to it.
Okay, so there are things that we can do, and I know sometimes you do struggle with fatigue. So potentially we could look at getting you a perching stool.
Okay.
And I can show you what that is, and it would just give you the opportunity to sit down while you're making that cup of tea.
Yeah.
Just to perch on the edge, and it just gives you an opportunity to rest and conserve your energy.
Okay.
So that's something we can explore further.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Hi, so you come up here. So that was a short video, but just for a bit of clarity with what we're looking at as well.
That's brilliant. So that's the kind of thing that you would actually do,
Yeah,
either in that setting, or would you do it at somebody's home as well?
Yeah, we certainly would.
Brilliant.
It's more difficult in somebody's home because they almost have to offer you a drink first, but we do. If they don't, I do say, I need to have a look at you doing X, Y, and Z. Are you happy to do that with me? So we do ask. And I've got a question down here from Georgia. How many pieces of equipment we can use to help people? Does that, when you say that, do you mean, so there's almost an unlimited amount of equipment as to according to what that person needs. So whatever you need to put in place to make your environment safe, make that person safe, we can recommend, we can issue pieces of equipment. If it's bigger pieces, we need to refer on to social services. So like with bigger pieces of bathroom equipment and things like that. But you can make those recommendations and they can be further assessed.
Brilliant. And I suppose that's just this exercise is just one thing. That's tea making.
One thing, yeah. There's lots of other things that we assess as well. Like getting in and out of baths, on and off toilets, up and down stairs, in and out of beds, on and off chairs. There's so many things that we look at. You know, there's chair races, there's so many pieces of equipment that we can look at. So it keeps the role really varied, challenging, interesting, and you're constantly learning in this sort of job.
So there you go, guys. I think you've got a flavour there of how many things you have to consider when looking at this, and actually I'll speak for myself. It's given me a much clearer understanding of exactly what an OT, an occupational therapist, does. I don't think I realised how much goes into it, and it's been really great to do the exercise and to hear the students talk about it and go through those steps and those processes and start to break it down and have that realisation as to how much goes through it, and watching the video as well. So that's been really good. Thank you so much for that, Claire. Thank you for coming along, and thank you for taking the time to explain and to go through the exercise with us. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for
Enjoy the day, everyone.
Thank you very much. And Belinda as well. Thank you as well for helping out in the other breakout room and in this room as well. So guys, that's giving you more food for thought. We met a lot of people yesterday who did different things, and now we've seen this today. We're going to hit lunch now. So now it is lunchtime. Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone. So as we know, this is our virtual taster day with allied health professions. We've done the morning part already. We've gone away. We've had lunch. We've had some very exciting lunches. We've discussed it in the chat box. The next stage, so earlier on, we looked at OTs and we did an assessment exercise, and we looked through what they would do to assess an activity, and we broke it down, and we actually went through the stages of making a cup of tea and the things that we need to take into consideration. And I think that was a really eye-opening session for lots of us, and it's been really good because that linked back to yesterday when we heard those OTs talking about what they do and how they do it and how they got there. And we listened to Abigail talking about what she's doing on her apprenticeship, and then we listened to Kate speaking about what she does as an OT as well. We met some radiographers yesterday, but today we're going to meet Ben, and he's going to take us through a case study. So let's get to it. Ben, welcome to today's session. Give us a little quick intro, and then I'm going to go through the stuff that I've got on my screen, and then I'm going to hand it over fully to you. So let us know who you are and what you do.
I'm hoping you can hear me.
Can hear you perfectly.
Lovely. My name's Ben. I'm the interventional lead for the West Herts Trust. I've got a slide actually on my bit about myself, so we can jump to that when we get there. But yeah, really excited to speak to you all. Hopefully we can inspire a couple of you to be radiographers.
Brilliant.
and be useful.
That's good. This is going to be good because it's going to link back to yesterday. Right. So guys, remember this, if you haven't done it already, as always, scan that QR code. Teamwork activity is the session that we're doing now. So make sure that you click that one and again, answer the questions. You know that we need the demographics. We need the answers to the questions. Same questions as always, but we need them, please. Any teachers in classrooms with students, please make sure all your students get it done as well. Please make sure all your students get it done. I'm going to be doing it in the background just to make sure it works. So remember, you can take your mobile phone. If you've got an iPhone or a QR scanner on it, take it. If it's an iPhone, you just hold it over the QR code and it'll pick it up. So remember, first question, what session are you joining today? This one is, actually, I apologize. I got that one wrong. It's case study. We are on case study. Same code, but you just click case study when you go to it, because teamwork activity we did earlier. Remember, you can either put that code in or you can scan the QR code. And if you can, let me know once it's done. Remember, it's going to be the same questions as always, but we need them. Okay, got some dones, got some finished. Give me a few more, and then we can move on. Okay. That's good. Right, I think we can move on. Now, Ben, you said you got a slide. Do you want me to stop sharing so you can take over the screen?
Yes, please.
Let's go for it. I'm going to stop and we're going to hand it over to Ben. Go for it.
So,
Beautiful.
Can we all see that? Is that?
Certainly can.
Lovely. Right. So, radiography. We're going to do a few case studies today. So, because I've got quite a long, about 20 minutes now, but we've got 5 different case studies we're going to have a look at, because radiography is such a broad topic. It's not just the x-rays that you see every day, what you see on sort of the TVs when you watch Casualty and things when you're just having an x-ray taken. So this is me, and this is why I delayed my introduction. I'm the interventional lead for the West Herts Teaching Hospital. It's quite a broad title. More or less, that means that I do quite a few theatre cases where we look at opening up vessels in the body. So when people have collapsed vessels or they have clogged, then we go in with one of the radiologists, one of the doctors, and we image them and then open up all those areas so that the blood flow reactivates and is able to flow right down to every part of the body. I've been a radiographer for 7 years, and in this current role for nearly 2 years. I'm also the student coordinator for the site. So if you have any questions about students afterwards, when we get around to the Q&A bit, I'm more than happy to answer any questions about the sort of what the students have to do to become a radiographer and everything else that goes alongside that. So that's me. So the case study that we're going to look at first, probably the biggest challenge we've had in the last, who knows how long, million years, COVID-19. It's been going on for, feels like 20 years, but it's been sort of 2.5 years of sort of the hardest time that we've had as a whole entity of the NHS. We are, as radiographers, right on the front line against this. Every single patient that is a suspected COVID-19 will have some form of imaging. So we have to come into direct contact with almost every one of those patients. Doesn't matter if it's just an X-ray, which you can see on the screen now. The X-ray that you can see is quite typical of a COVID-19 patient. What you can see, hopefully, if I can get this to work, can you all see the laser pen that I've just drawn on the screen? Does that work?
I certainly can, definitely.
Lovely. So the image there itself that's on the screen has got a normal heart shape. So this shadowing in the middle is your heart. Okay, so this is quite standard for a normal X-ray. Okay, you can tell that because it's within sort of 1/3 of the whole chest cavity. So if you're covering the whole thing, it needs to be within sort of 1/3 of that area to be deemed a normal heart size. It's also got the same activity going on here, which is the mediastinum. This is where the sort of the heart and the aorta come off of the heart and it comes up and around. And this is very normal. There's no sort of abnormality or any sort of problems going on with those areas. But what you can see, and which is very, very classic for the COVID-19 patients, is high levels of something called consolidation or shadowing. So all of these areas here, so when I circle them here, you can see that there's quite a lot of shadowing in these areas. And what that is consolidation. And we're going to go on to that in a moment of what that actually really looks like in the lungs and what effect that can have while that's there. Okay. So what you've got is now a CT slice. So this is a completely different modality. You had X-ray of the first one. You had this patient. This is the same patient, or well, the one on the right isn't. The normal one is of a different patient. But you then go on to have a highly detailed CT scan of your lungs to see how extensive that COVID-19 is affecting those areas. So on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a normal CT scan, and you can see that the dark area here is the lung. Okay, and the darker area means that it's full of air, so it's nicely filled and we can see everything that is really clear. Okay, now if you look at the second one, you can then see on here there's huge areas where it's quite white or quite grey, and that is where the consolidation is. That's what's stopping those patients from being able to breathe. Okay, and that's what eventually is really harming those patients. So on the left, I'll just go over it again. You can see that there's a high level of consolidation, and that's what's making it difficult to breathe. The air literally can't get through the vessels, or not through the vessels, sorry, through the tubes in your lungs to get that air into the body and be able to breathe. Okay, so that's shortening your breath, which is then causing all the problems with the COVID-19. So this patient then went on to have a further X-ray, and you can see that on this side particularly, there's even higher levels of that consolidation. So they've now got into the phase where it's really starting to affect their lungs. Okay. then this patient went on to have something called an ECMO. Okay, these are very, very invasive procedures that radiographers then help with. You can see there, it's an extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Okay, I'm not very good at saying that, but what it is where the blood is taken from the body, placed into a machine, and the carbon dioxide that isn't being processed is taken out of the blood and re-oxygenated and put back into the body. So it's a mechanical version of breathing. Okay, you can see it on the right hand side here. You're going to place some tubes into some very big vessels, the carotid in your neck, and then there's a femoral down on this side here. You're going to place some very large tubes. When you're considering sort of a needle that we'd normally use just to go into these sort of vessels, and they'd be like a standard needle that you'd find on like a sewing kit. These sort of needles are massive. You're talking about 1 centimeter wide. And that to go into someone's body, that width is massive. You're making quite a large hole in the body. All of this is done under X-ray. So this is where the radiographer, as myself, would be involved. So you have a surgeon that's doing all of the needles and things, but to gain access and to make sure they're going into the right areas, you have to have X-ray in the room to be able to differentiate between the vessels and also to direct them to know that it's going to the right place. So these tubes have to go through the vessels up towards the heart, and they have to go through the vessel in your neck down towards your heart so that they can interact with each other. And as I say, remove the blood, re-oxygenate it and re-pump it back into the body. So this is generally a life-saving procedure that we're doing, because the body is just not getting enough oxygen within it. So we're involved in a really, really complex procedure, which has quite a few high-risk elements to it. But you have to, with any procedure that you're doing, doesn't matter what you're doing, you have to do the risk benefits. So for these patients, and this one particularly, to perform this procedure now saves his life. So we are able to then re-oxygenate his blood, and then was able to transfer him to another hospital. What we did is take a final image of him, and you can see here that this patient is really, really struggling. Okay, so from here, this circle here, you can see there's a line coming down here. This is where the left lung has collapsed slightly. Okay, so it's come away from the chest cavity, this line that's down here. Okay, with that in mind, they've placed something called a chest drain into this area. So it's taking away that air that is pressurizing this lung. Okay, again, these are all done under X-ray. So we're involved with every aspect of this patient's treatment. You can also see that these are the tubes that they've placed in while they've been doing the ECMO. The bottom one's not so obvious, but the top one here is a really wide tube. You can see that is the tube that they use to perform the procedure. And if you compare this tube to the tube that's here in the chest drain, that's what I'm saying about how much bigger those tubes are to be able to get that blood out of it. Okay. This patient that we did, he was transferred across to Patsworth. Patsworth Hospital is a specialist in cardiothoracic, so chest and lung hospital. And they're also a transplant centre. This patient didn't need a transplant, but once they got to Patsworth, they made a full recovery. Okay, so with all of the different procedures that were performed while at the West Herts Trust, they were then able to be transferred to the specialist in our area and made a full recovery. Okay, and that is the extent of what COVID-19 can do to the body. It's not been much fun, and dealing with lots and lots of these patients almost every day has been a real challenge. But there has been positive stories like this one where we were able to save people's lives that maybe potentially wouldn't have been saved. And as I say, radiography and radiographers are integral to that whole journey. So every time that they needed something, they had to be with a radiographer to almost perform every part of that process. So that is case study one. I don't know if you want me to take questions about the case studies or if we want to do it all at the end. I don't know if Max, if you've got a feeling on that.
Does anybody have any questions about that? You can ask them as we go along. Let's see what we got in the chat box or what we get in the chat box. I mean, I'll speak for myself and say that, yeah, I'm not really sure I realized that we had to talk yesterday from radiographers, but now you're putting it into pictures, as it were. Yeah, I didn't quite realize how much you were involved in and the kind of things that, yeah, that go on. Those tubes don't look nice.
No, they are extensive. Don't get me wrong. They are at the last point of us being able to perform a life-saving procedure to save that person's life. Doesn't happen with every patient, luckily, but the ones that end up in our intensive care, they have the potential to have that procedure.
Okay, interesting. George has asked a question. He says, can you expand on what you mean by consolidation?
Yes, the easiest thing to do is to go back if I can. How do I do that? Will it allow me to? No, it won't. That's annoying. Why does it not let me do that? So I'll just explain it. Consolidation, that is literally like fluid and mucus that ends up in the lungs. Okay, so where you've got bronchi and they break off into the lungs, those areas of alveoli get blocked. Okay, so the little sacs of air that we have in our lungs get blocked by mucus and by fluid effectively, and they then can't transfer oxygen and carbon dioxide to be able for you to allow you to breathe. Okay, so those areas, once you've got consolidation in there, it can be cleared through antibiotics, but you have to have the right antibiotic to clear each consolidation. So that's the difficulty that you have, knowing which antibiotics to give. And obviously, if you give a wide range of antibiotics, you then become resistant to them. So you don't want to give the wrong one to treat the wrong consolidation.
Another question we've got from Bethel is, like, how do you interpret all of that from the x-rays?
So it's pattern recognition. It becomes almost like second nature to a radiographer. You will stare at x-rays for hours and hours and hours while you're training, and also once you're obviously qualified, you will be constantly looking at x-rays. So it's all about picking up those pattern recognitions and being able to see when something isn't right. And that's what we teach our students when we first start out. All it is picking up on little signals. So like that image that we had before where the edge of the lung had come away slightly, picking up that little line that's appeared on the x-ray and being able to take that from the image and being able to then tell the doctors and tell the teams that are looking after that patient what we can see.
When you were showing those things earlier, so those x-rays, am I right in understanding then that procedure, so that procedure, or some of them, like when the tubes are going in, you were saying about that being done under x-ray. So does that mean that the surgeon is looking at the x-ray, or the person doing it is looking at the x-ray rather than the person?
Absolutely. Yeah, so they're not relying on their eyes. Not relying on cutting the patient open and seeing it all at the same time. All of these things can be done under a keyhole surgery. So rather than having to open them up and extensively doing surgery that's causing lots of potential problems, because any time you open the patient more than a keyhole, you've got real chance of getting infections or anything else that can happen while that's going on. And while that is, if you go in through that keyhole surgery, you're able to really limit that, and then you just rely on the x-rays to be able to know exactly where you are.
Brilliant. Okay, and then last, Louisa's got a question. She says, if monitoring someone, how regularly would you do an x-ray on the individual?
So that varies massively. So if you're an outpatient, we wouldn't probably x-ray you more than without a 3-month gap. But a patient that could be within our intensive care units, they could get x-rayed every day, because their stability is reliant on knowing what's happening in their lungs at that point. So yeah, you could see the same patient every day for a period of a couple of weeks. But yeah, as a normal outpatient, it's usually a 3-month barrier before you would have a follow-up x-ray.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Right, let's try case study 2. So this was a patient that came in, and as you can see, they were ongoing right upper quadrant pain. So you're talking about the right sort of upper part of your middle, effectively. And they'd had it for a while. They couldn't figure out why, and they'd been feeling hot without fevers. And this patient came for an ultrasound. Okay. These findings that were found, and we'll go over this, were completely by random. They didn't actually know they were searching for this, but it appeared and they were able to then deal with it. So what you can see is a cross-section of a liver. So this bit outside here is all of the liver in the patient, okay? And that's what it appears like on an ultrasound. An ultrasound effectively is a high energy sound wave that bounces off of human tissue and comes back to the probe that you're placing against the skin. The computer is then able to differentiate those sound waves and be able to demonstrate it onto the computer screen, okay? And what you can see here is there's lots and lots of areas where there's a density that shouldn't be there, okay? So why is that not moving forwards? Let's just, there we go. So you can see in all of these red rings, there's a density that you can now see, all right? All of that should be this same gray color. It shouldn't have a density to it. So what we're now looking at, and this is again another same patient, just another cross section, and you can see large extensive areas, and they're called hyperechoic. Okay, so because they're denser and they're darker, they come through as hyperechoic. That's how they describe them. With this, it's suggestive of metastatic disease. Metastatic disease is a cancer. Okay, so all of this is potentially cancers that have appeared in the liver, and this is completely, this was very random. This wasn't what they were searching for when they came for the initial study. So from this, they then went across to have an urgent CT scan. And again, you can see on all of these, you can see large areas of darkness on the image that you shouldn't be able to see. They should just be this same sort of tone of grey all the way through. And you can see there that there is large elements of metastatic disease. So this patient was then transferred to Mount Vernon, and they are undergoing chemotherapy at the moment because they're a specialist in that area. So we were able to identify it and give them the best chance of then surviving. They're still going through their treatment now, so I'm not exactly sure of how they've got on, but that's the sort of elements that you can find using different modalities, using different versions of what a radiographer can do, using ultrasound, using CT, to confirm whether or not a patient has got a certain illness or not. Okay, so that's case study 2. I don't know if there's any questions coming from that one, or if you want me to keep going.
Keep going, and then if you've got any questions, put them in and we can go through them.
That's fine. So case study 3. So this is effectively about me. So as a radiographer, I have advanced my scope of practice. So I'm doing more than what a radiographer can do just normally. So I place PICC lines into people. What they are is peripherally inserted central catheters. Okay, they're a tube, and you can see it here, this black line that goes in the arm and travels all the way around and sits just above the heart. Okay, what that is that it can then go in and effectively give any medication to this patient, and those lines can stay in people for up to a year. All right, so rather than a cannula, if anyone knows what they are, the little needles that people put into that we put into patients to give any sort of fluids or drugs or anything like that, we can put in a long-term catheter, which is a long version of a cannula, and it can give any medication that they need for up to a year. Okay, the benefit of these lines is that you can then go home with them. So rather than the patient being in the hospital and having to stay there for potentially 6 weeks, we can give them this line, and then they're able to go home and have all their treatment at home, which is much, much more preferable for most patients. So what we'll do is have a little look at what we're doing. So if it will let me move on, there we go. So what you can see here on the image, this is the ultrasound that we use to to identify the vessels that we're going to then put a needle into. So this one that's got the V in it is a vein, and this one would be an artery. Okay, the way you'd know that is if you were to push down on this, the vein would completely collapse and wouldn't do anything. The artery would collapse, but then pulse. Because the heart is pumping that blood around in the arteries, it would then pulse with the heartbeat. So you would know which one is which. For PICC lines, we are very much staying away from arteries. We do not want to go anywhere near them. Okay, so this is the danger of this procedure. We don't want to cannulate, put a needle into the artery whatsoever. We just want to go into the vein. Well, then you'll see here, this is an image where you can see the needle coming into the vessel. This is a different patient, but you can see here the white dot in the middle of the vein. This is the needle that's come through the skin all the way down and into the vessel itself. So we're able to then pass that tube through there and into the vessel and all the way around to the heart. And then once you're here, this image isn't the greatest, unfortunately, but you can see there's a line that comes all the way around here. There will be there you go. It's not the easiest, but if I do that a couple of times, you might just be able to see it. That comes round here and sits just above the heart, just here. Okay, so this is the tube that we're placing into the body, and then they can have all of their different medications, and you can also give nutrition, and you can also give chemotherapy. Okay, so that's the different reasons we would give this line. The other thing about these ones, these images that we take, this is obviously a static, but as we place the line, I can take active and live images that appear, and I can see the tube moving through the body. So if it started, because at this point here, the vessels all link up. Some go up in your neck that go up here, and some go across your body. So we need it to go down towards your heart for it to be safe to use. So you can take live x-rays to then position this tube all the way down and into just above where the heart is, okay? And that's the benefit of x-rays and being able to see it live, is that you can instantly identify if something's going wrong or going in the wrong place, and you can adjust it so that you get the best outcome for the patient first time. So again, that's where the line finishes. So that's case study 3. Case study 4 is NG tubes. Max, I'll just go through the whole lot and then we'll do some questions at the end if that's all right.
Yeah, that's cool by me. Go for it.
So NG tubes, nutritional tubes, effectively. What they are is a nasogastric. So what you're doing is placing a tube in the nose and it's going down to the stomach. Okay. It's not the most comfortable thing to have done because it's obviously a tube that's traveling down your throat. But what it is that these tubes need to be placed there if the stomach collapses. So we need to re-inflate the stomach. The other thing that you can do is also give medication and nutrition through those tubes so that the patient can get what they need if they aren't able to swallow. The identification of those tubes is particularly important. So you can either do a pH test, because you can pull out a little bit of the stomach acid if it's there, and if you do it on a litmus paper and it becomes back positive for acid, you can then state that it's in the stomach, or you have to do a chest x-ray. So again, this is where radiographers come in. We have to be able to identify if those tubes are going in the right place or not. So why is this so important? If the tube is going into the wrong place, this is a serious never event. Okay, so for any hospital in the country, if we were to use an NG tube or a nasogastric tube that is in the wrong place, this is deemed highly, highly inappropriate and is easily rectifiable. So by having a chest x-ray, you can then sort out being able to see if it's in the right place. So this is what we title as a never event. So we should never use a line that hasn't been checked prior to it. So what you'll see here is that the tube is in the right place. So this line that comes down the middle and then ends up here is traveling into the stomach. All right, so that's where that NG tube goes. Now I'm going to show you some different images of ones that have gone into the wrong place. So you'll see here that it comes across, round, and then into the lung. So this has not been situated into the right area. So we need to remove this and resite it, okay? You've also then got another one, and this again looks very similar to the one before, but where it bifurcates and goes across is actually into the lung. So you can see down into here, rather than coming through this space behind the heart and coming round into the stomach, it's gone across into the lung and is sitting at the bottom of the lung. So if we were to use this line, any fluid or any food or any medication would just go sit at the bottom of the lung, and that could cause that consolidation, the same as the one that in that previous bit that I said about. If you're causing consolidation, you can then get something called pneumonia, and pneumonia could kill someone. So we really cannot be giving the stuff through that line. The last one again is another example, going across into the back of the lung. So we cannot be using those things. Okay, so case study 5. This is a little bit more fun because the last sort of 4 have been quite heavy. These are things that radiographers see and tell each other when we see certain things. So this is a child. This is a coin that they've managed to swallow. Very common. You end up having to do x-rays. If they can't identify it with a metal detector, you'll then end up taking an x-ray and you'll see something like this because it comes through very clearly on an x-ray. And again, this was an adult, so he was clearly planning on proposing and had it in his mouth when he was there. So he swallowed it and then it appeared into his bowel. So his fiance or potential fiance is going to have to wait a little bit of time while that comes out before he can propose. So yeah, not the greatest, but
is that what I think it is? You just have to wait.
Yeah,
for nature to take
it needs to come out. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's probably going to have to sift through each time just to check if there's anything in it.
Okay. Let's hope it was worth the money. Okay.
Yeah. These are just some interesting images. Cross section of someone's head that has had a knife placed into it. Again, shouldn't be there. This patient actually survived. This is one that we did at our site, and it's they survived this. They, don't get me wrong, they had to have lots of different surgery to come back to normal, but they survived this.
So that's gone through the skull.
Through his skull, yes.
Wow.
He's
How did they
hit on the head.
survive that?
It's a good question. They just managed to not hit too many things that were too valuable, because as you can see on the left one, it's kind of going down the edge of the skull.
Yep.
And I know it's coming in here, so this is why we always do 2 views. So whenever we do any x-rays, we always want to do 2 so that we can identify like the angles and things, because this first one looks like it's just going directly into the head, where actually it's going off to the side quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we always do 2 views whenever we do any x-rays. But yeah, this one was quite an interesting one. For any of the girls, this is why they highly recommend not wearing high heels, because the pressure that you're putting on your foot is incredible when you're talking about only standing on your toes. This is another one that just an interesting x-ray that if you ever thought why your foot hurt after you'd been on a night out, this would be why, because you're putting all of your pressure and all of your weight through just your toes effectively. Now, the next set of images I will flash up, but I will not talk too much about. They are all things that the patient slipped and fell on. I'll put it that way. As you can see, there is all sorts that we find when patients slip and fall, or they tell us that they've slipped and fell. Generally, interestingly, it's men. They slip and fall on things a little bit more than women do. But you've got a Toy Story character, a can, a light bulb, a bottle. That's actually a snooker ball. And this one is probably the most interesting one. That's a drug screen. So they are full of drugs. That was a prisoner that came through and they needed identification. The difficulty with these ones is if one of these was to burst, that patient is very, very likely to die. Just because of the way the nature of those drugs work. They are not supposed to be in your rectum or in your sort of intestines. So if any one of them was to burst, they would need instant and quite life-saving treatment. But yeah, The last one, just as again, this is a bit of a joke, but this is quite a classic image. Someone else decided to photobomb a chest X-ray. They put their head over the top of it. That's not done at our site, thankfully. That's just a very classic image that you've got. But someone jumping in front of an X-ray, and then their image appears across someone else's. But yeah, that's the end of my presentation as such. But I've seen a few questions go in. But if you've
Yeah, I mean, like
got
one of
any-
the questions there, I mean, it came in before we saw that last set of images, because I think the last set of images is quite obvious how you identify most of them. But how long did it take you to understand or read the scans that you take on individuals, on people?
So it varies. Basic chest X-rays and things like that, you should, by the time you're qualified, be able to identify most of it. So the course is 3 years to become a radiographer, and they generally, by the end of your 3 years, you'll be able to identify the main sort of basic pathologies or things like that. The more detailed things on CT and things like that, and MRIs and ultrasound, well, ultrasound requires a whole master's. So to become a sonographer, you have to do a master's in sonography to then be able to identify all these things. But to do what I do, to do PICC lines, that took me a year to get competent at that. To do the whole procedure by myself without anyone being in the room just to be able to help me out, it took me about a year to get completely competent.
Brilliant.
What
other questions have we got? Because I know that we also have now Amanda join us, because we're about to hit the bigger Q&A session. And so we can get questions in for Ben. What questions have we got, guys? Put them in the chat box for us. I know I'll give you a minute to type as well as we speak.
Because I had one directly to me. There was one that said, how do I protect myself from X-rays?
Oh, good question.
You generally, there's protection all around the rooms. So you have a lead shield that protects the radiographers, but we also do wear a radiation badge that gets sent off every 3 months. So we get analyzed to see how much radiation we are receiving. And if we were to be massively too high, your scope of practice would be looked into, just as why is it so high? And also they may tell you that you may need to take some time off just because your radiation sort of is way too much. You need to be sort of controlling that. But yeah, most of the time we are, as you, well, if any of you have had X-rays before, we're the ones that run around the screen and aren't in the way. So we are protected from nearly all of the radiation that comes.
So Alfie's got a good question, like how often do complications occur? And then Bethel's got a good follow-up on that as well.
It's all depends on what we're talking about. If it's PICC lines, then almost never now. When I first started training, then there were complications because you're only just learning how to manipulate all the machinery and all the needles and things to get it in. But at that point, now I'm completely signed off and competent. I would say that complications wise, it's a handful, never almost, I would say, because they're quite sort of, I wouldn't say basic, but they're quite sort of routine sort of procedures. So there's not too much that can go wrong. Other things are the ECMOs and things like that we talked about at the start, they can go wrong quite quickly. But they are life-saving procedures. So the risks and benefits of those is what you weigh up.
We got a question from Bethel is about, does it give you a higher risk of cancer? And I suppose that question goes both ways. And we can look at Louisa's question afterwards as well, which is, you mentioned before that some people may have to get X-rays all the time. And if having an X-ray daily, does that have any immediate health problems due to the constant dose of radiation? And what would this include if so?
So for us, the risk of cancer is not really there. So the protection that we have is so high, and as I say, because we send off our dose meters every 3 months, we are constantly being checked to make sure that we're not receiving any sort of really high doses. And then to follow up with that, it's all about risk management. So if we're having to X-ray someone every day, the first couple of days would probably be acceptable, but then we start having conversations with the team. So is there anything that has changed for that patient in the last 24 hours? If nothing has changed, the x-ray will look the same. If something has changed, say they've put a breathing tube down, or they've put an NG tube down, or they've suddenly improved quite a lot, or they've suddenly decreased and their saturations have fallen so that the oxygen levels aren't reaching what they should, then we can take the x-ray, because we have to know what's going on. But that's our ITU patient, that's our intensive care patients that we're doing that for. The basic sort of patients, we would be questioning whether they need x-rays all the time. So that's part of our job, is to almost deny x-rays, because if we can stop people from having that radiation because they don't need it, that's where our specialism comes in, and we can try and find a different way of doing it.
So it's about balancing that risk in terms of how I know from experience that once you're in intensive care, I mean, you are the most sick person that you could be, right? So I'm guessing you're balancing out the risk of continuous x-rays is way lower than not being able to treat the person, because death is the only next place, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we need to be constantly monitoring whether or not we can treat this patient in a different way, or if we can really help them by doing this x-ray. That's what our sort of stewardship is, I would call it that.
Brilliant. That's a good insight to it. There's a lot more that goes into it than you think. Well, I always say that because that's what I learn. And I hope that students have learned the same. So, we met radiographers yesterday and they spoke to us about what they do. Now you've seen those case studies from Ben, and he's shown you some of the things that he does and other things that you can do. And we had a brilliant example of what we spoke about yesterday when they said you always take an x-ray from two angles, is it? Two viewpoints, because what you see
90
from one
degrees,
side
yeah,
is not what you always see from the other. And as you saw with that person with a knife in their head, you can see why. So that's brilliant. But look, I know that we've got Amanda that's joined us, Melina as well. We're back for more questions. Questions about anything over the last 2 days, I suppose. So we want to get questions in because we're only going till 2 o'clock now. So what other questions have we got? And Melina, welcome back. Put them in the chat box.
Thank you. Yeah, so Amanda Donnelly, recruitment manager, is not able to make it. But if you've got any questions regarding interview tips, etc., I can take those questions, and Amanda will quite happily, answer them.
Brilliant.
And we have Amanda Stratford, who is a specialist OT. So she's quite aware of the presentation that was done earlier. So yeah, if anyone have any questions for us, we're welcome.
What questions have we got, guys? What questions do we have? And I'm just going to take over the screen again for a second, because whilst you guys think of questions, you know what I'm going to need you to do, because we're at the Q&A session now. So let me just bring up my Zoom.
I wonder, Ben, if you convince anyone to become a radiographer.
I'm not going to lie and say it hasn't piqued my interest, because it certainly has. I think it's quite everything that we've looked at is quite cool. But then, having said that, I have to say that exercise that we did with the OTs is very eye-opening as well, because I probably genuinely didn't appreciate how much goes into that, because of I automatically assumed and thought about it from a point of view of somebody who would have been born with either a disability or a visual impairment or whatever it could be. And I was thinking that surely you would grow up and learn how to do these things and how to navigate it. But then it was pointed out that some people, there's a lot of people who maybe have a stroke or pick up that disability later in life, so they've never had to get around it, so they have to relearn everything. So yeah. But Ben, tell me first of all, what made you want to get into radiography? And did you know it was this broad? Did you know that these are the kind of things that you could do? And what you're doing now with the PICC lines, is that something that you've wanted to do, or is that part of like a rotation? Is that part of what you have to learn along the way, and you're there at the moment and you'll do something else different?
So that's a massive question.
Yes,
yeah. Did I know? I was always planning to be a physio. that was kind of, as I was doing my A-levels, I was going to be a physio. But when I sort of looked into getting a job and things, when I was going through uni, there was no sort of physio jobs at the end of the three, or at that point, there wasn't really many physio jobs. So I broadened that out to look at what sort of areas were quite similar. And I had a distinct interest in physics, and physics plus physio sort of adds together to make radiography. So that's how I sort of stumbled into radiography, really. But I wouldn't have changed it for anything now, because as you say, the work that we do is so broad. The 5 case studies that I've shown you today is just the tip of the iceberg of what radiographers are able to do, because we've also got nuclear medicine, we've got MRI, we've got cardiac imaging. There's so many areas of expansion within radiography that is just constant, because every time someone invents a new way of imaging, the radiographers have to learn how to use it and learn how to get the best out of it. The PICC line stuff, that was an expansion on my service. So as the interventional lead for West Herts, I was offered these sort of extra training to be able to help the hospital. So there is only 3 of us in the whole hospital that actually put these lines into people. And at the point where I was learning, there was only 2. So they really wanted to open that service out and be able to progress it. So it's always just taking advantage of the areas that are needed. So yeah, because we were a little bit short in the hospital, I was able to push myself into that area and really progress and be able to do that. But that's what's happening across the country now. They're seeing that radiographers are able to do this much, or do many, many more things, and able to really push the service and push the profession to be able to do almost what the doctors are doing now.
Brilliant. That's good to hear. Right. So we've got another couple of questions that have come in. Interesting. You mentioned nuclear medicine there. A friend of mine, I'd never heard of it. A friend of mine does nuclear medicine. I think he's in Sussex, and he loves it. And it's really interesting what he does, and something I never heard of before. But so we have got Amanda, who, as Melina just explained, is here for occupational therapy. So Amanda, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. In relation to occupational therapy, apart from the use of equipment, is there any other ways that you help preserve an individual's independence?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question, because it's so varied, occupational therapy, because we work in lots of different age groups. I actually work in elderly, and we find it's mental health. So the way we kind of support at the moment is sometimes with group therapy. So you may do an anxiety group to support someone managing their anxiety, but it's the process of getting to a group that would increase someone's confidence, or the planning around it before they even get to the group. And then it's the peer support of like, oh my God, thank God there's someone like me. I thought I was the only one. And group therapy works really well. We also do individual therapy. So say if someone did want to come to a group, but they hadn't been out for so long, it might be a step before that, where you might just go graded exposure to getting out the front door, just get out the front step, then maybe go on the bus. It's all kind of dependent on individual need, and you have to be very careful with anxiety that you don't overdo it. Find a happy medium, and it's all based on what the individual would like and what's going to work. And it's like kind of Ben's job. You have an idea, but sometimes you have to adapt and do different things, because it's people, and it doesn't always go ABC. It's more like Z, whatever. It's just, but it's fun and it's good that you can adapt. Trying to think of other ways. So there's individual, group therapy, like travel training, cooking skills. Like sometimes people live on their own, their partner used to be the main cook, they've passed away, or they've just lost confidence, they're so depressed that they can't cook. So it's about, how do we adapt? Do they want to get back to cooking, or do we put something else in to maintain their independence in kind of being able to look after themselves? That can come into washing, dressing and all sorts. And like using prompts or signage or other people in their lives as well. We do a lot of work with outside agencies and carers, and also family members can be the best support ever. So does that answer it kind of in a nutshell? There's so much to occupational therapy. It's such a fantastic career.
I mean, it pretty much does. And I think that's exactly what we kind of learned with that session yesterday and today. And Louisa has put, yes, thank you in the chat box. I mean, I think we learned that yesterday and today, that there is so much to it, that it goes deep. And that there's a lot more to explore. And it comes back to that point that I always make to students as well. These sessions are to get you interested and to show you as much as we can within the time available, but now use it and go away and continue to do more research and look further into these things, especially if they excite you. Now, before we continue, we are in the Q&A section, so I am going to ask you guys to scan the QR code and answer the questions on Mentee for us again. Get those done, and whilst you are doing those, we are going to ask the two questions, well, the same question to Ben and to Amanda as well. Amanda, you tell us first, what are the biggest challenges for your job?
Time, one thing, kind of, it's very, very busy, and prioritising, managing risk, I suppose, and staffing is actually an issue, to be honest, because it's quite hard to recruit at the moment within the NHS. It has been for a while, so it'd be great to get some new recruits, new enthusiasm. We are actually, you've probably been aware, but we do apprentice program within the HPFT, so which is good. Yeah, I think money comes down to it in some ways as well, because obviously there's not an endless budget. But yeah, I think you work in a team that help overcome the challenges, so which is good. There's always an answer, and there's always lots of people to draw on within a team to help you.
Amanda, I was just wondering, if people are interested in becoming an apprentice OT, how would it about doing that in HBFT?
Generally, it's for the assistant therapy practitioners, so unqualified posts, which are either a 3 or a 4 posts, and they have to have a minimum of 2, so start in the trust, and a minimum of two years experience within the trust working as an OT, not as an OT, as within an OT team to get experience and things. And with it, if we know they're interested, they get lots of opportunities to do shadowing of other areas rather than just one area. And then there's a certain level of qualifications, so at least I think it's A levels, I can't remember, it's all, I can find it out if you really want to know. And then they would apply to the university, and we would obviously support them to apply. So we send 2 people a year. So far we've had, it started not last year, year before, so we've got 4 people on the course. So they go to university 1 day a week, and they're in work for 4 days. So it's mainly work-based learning, but obviously there's the academic side to it as well. They do placements as well. I think it's around, the first one was 4 weeks, second one 5 weeks, and the course is for 3 years. So yeah, I've got information on it if anyone wanted me to send anything.
Thanks.
Potential challenges, we'll get to Ben about potential challenges in jobs, and then we'll come back to Amanda about actually Amanda, Melina and Ben about the next couple of questions coming up. So what are the biggest challenges for your job, Ben?
So it's a ever changing, and as Amanda's very aware, with you come in every day to a completely new environment and a completely new patient list. So that is one of the most difficult things, is that and it's generally one of the biggest positives as well, though, is that every single day is completely different. You can have massive challenges, but once you get past them, tomorrow's potentially a better day, and you're able to then do even more. The other challenge as a radiographer is generally we're potentially one of the most forgotten about people in the hospital. You hear lots of sort of support for nurses and doctors, and you go through the list and people generally forget about radiographers, and that's a difficulty on occasions to try and get our little bit of view across. And I've seen on here, there's one, someone's asked about difficulties of working with other specialisms. Certain doctors like to tell us what to do rather than requesting imaging. That can happen on occasions where they think that they know better. But you generally have some open conversations with them, and you're able to bring them round to your point of view. But it can be a little bit tricky on occasions where you're not fighting, but you're standing your ground over what you believe is the right thing, and that can be a difficult situation on occasions.
Interesting. Now, I suppose obviously the point is for either of you to patients, it's like customers, it's not a steady flow. You don't know what you're going to get day to day, so I suppose it's difficult to plan, and you have to adapt to what is in front of you, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Other question: when working in a multidisciplinary team or working with one other specialist, what potential issues or problems do you face, if any, and how do you overcome them? Ben, do you want to go first?
So yeah, that's very similar to what I've just said, going into those sort of open conversations with other specialisms and being able to put your point of view across. I think it gets easier with the more experience you have, because you can give examples, and you can give sort of much more of a kind of, it sounds educated answer to a doctor, and they're not just going to dismiss you. I say doctors, it could be anyone. I'm not just pinning them all on doctors, but you generally do have the arguments because they want a certain image of a patient, and you may say no to them, just because, as I say, if it's a patient that has had an X-ray and you're not going to see anything new from it, you need to be able to have that discussion with them and be able to give a good enough answer to them for them to understand why they don't need that image, or why they do need the image, and you need to be able to have those open conversations with the other specialisms to understand, because we as radiographers, we don't get to see the patients for very long. They'll be in and out of our department within 5 minutes, especially if it's a chest X-ray. It's very quick, but all we get is a request form that says potentially a couple of lines on it about the patient and why they think they need the imaging. And we have to assess from that very small amount of detail whether or not that image is required. And as I say, that comes with experience, knowing whether or not certain things need it or they don't need it.
Interesting. Cool. Amanda, what about yourself?
I think there's lots of positives and negatives. I suppose one of the negatives is a bit like Ben saying, not always respected for your view. OTs are a bit of the underdog sometimes, because it's more about nursing and psychology, and sometimes we get pushed things our way that aren't really our kind of role. But I think there's a lot of respect, because I've been in the team a long time of your role, but occasionally everyone's under pressure and it's like, oh, can't you just do this? And it's like, actually we don't actually do that. Like, you need to refer to psychology, and that's just like, yeah, but you're here. No, we can't do that. So sometimes, but I think, like Ben said, experience, and if you can reason why and give a good reason, it's very respected. I think the positives of working in a team is that you get a really good rounded view of a patient, of all the different professions, and sometimes I'm not always right in what I'm thinking, so I can learn and develop from the other professionals still now.
Brilliant. That's good to hear. So guys, you're getting lots of examples there, and you're seeing how these things work, and you can see that the answers are broadly similar, and it's about going back to when we talked about those interview tips and techniques. This is why they want to know how you work in a team, how you negotiate things, how you work under pressure, because these are skills that you're going to have to call upon every day, because you are going to be working in potentially multidisciplinary teams or with other departments and having to share knowledge and opinions and discuss and debate. This is why we want those skills and those examples that you've got. I think, I don't know if this is going to be more a question for you, Melina, but somebody's asked a really valid question, Does doing a level 3 BTEC put you at a disadvantage in working in the NHS compared to doing A levels? Ben, you're shaking your head. Merlina as well. So, Merlina, you go first.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, a level 3 even in the health and social care course will put you on that stead. And you know, there are different sort of stepping stone as well. So, for example, if you want to go to the nursing side, there is the nursing associate role. So, I mean, you will be getting a degree level, but a pre-graduate degree level, and then you could go on further. If you want to go on the side of apprenticeship, let's say OT, yeah, that's definitely one of the requirements. Once it's a level 3, you're good to go. Yeah.
Brilliant. Ben, you were shaking your head as well. Did you have some insight on that?
Not so much insight, but just that will never hold you back. Not from a radiography's perspective, anyway. We're so. It sounds wrong, but we're so far removed from being just an educational thing. With the students that we have, is they're in placement for half the year that they're in doing their courses. So we don't need someone that can write a 10,000 word essay. It's not, or write an assessment. It's not vital. Don't get me wrong, there are assessments in radiography. You have to do certain things, but the biggest thing is, can you get on the ground? Can you take an x-ray? Can you talk to a patient? Are you able to interact with people in the right way? And a BTEC is never going to stop you from being able to do those things. If anything, it might even enhance it, potentially.
It's a really valid question. Lots of students ask me the same things. And a lot of those sessions that I do, we will talk about how valuable BTECs are and how valuable T levels are now, and also how valuable A levels are. What we want students to understand is that it's not just about A levels anymore. A lot of companies and a lot of different areas appreciate BTECs, T levels, apprenticeships and A levels all equally, because they all bring in different people with different attributes and that learn in different ways and bring different skills. That's why we don't just look at A levels anymore. Don't think that doing BTECs is a step down at all. It is not. They all bring their benefits. So don't bring that to your judgment. Are there specific A levels an interviewer may look for when applying for a job? Example, specific sciences, health and social BTEC.
For us, it would be physics.
Yeah.
Physics is quite you do a module of physics each year that you're in university. But that is, if you've done an A level in physics, which I did, those modules were very, I don't want to say easy, but they were at a lower level than doing A level physics. So yeah, it's nice to have because it's going to make your life easier at uni, but it's not. I don't think there's an essential physics or biology or anything to be said. I don't think they specify it in the course like module or whatever.
Brilliant.
I think overall would be maths and English. That's the basic really. Once you have that, maths and English and any other subjects, yeah, as Ben said, if it's related, then that's the plus. Yeah.
With apprenticeships as well. Sorry, Amanda, go for it.
I was going to say that's true. Maths and English is the main ones, and also health and social care, or any if unqualified band 3-4, if there's a special interest in something around occupations, I don't know, they've got skills in IT or something that they're really passionate about that they can support others to learn and develop, or they've got group experience, or that. It's mainly about the personal skills, being able to build a rapport and be able to communicate effectively. So it's not only about kind of what qualifications, it's about how you present when you do interview, which is very nerve-wracking. I can fully appreciate. So
just to add on to that, one thing with radiography, if you did ever want to do it, most places now have a requirement that you do some work experience. So you go into your local hospital and just have a look around and sort of observe what is going on, just so you've got an idea of what's going on with the whole range of radiography. I don't know if it's the same for the other areas, but yeah, there is a kind of it's mandated now that you have to have spent, I think it's at least 2 days worth of time in a hospital just to get a view of what you're actually applying for.
Yeah, Ben, I think when it looks really good if someone's got a good understanding and handle of what you're about and what you're trying to do as unqualified or qualified. Yeah, and just being able to, I suppose, know what the job's about rather than just not know, I suppose. It looks really good.
Lots of good information there, guys, and think about that. Last question. George has asked, how do you get work experience in the NHS? Any tips, any hints? Where can we go and look? Who do we go and ask?
I'm more than happy if you wanted to email me, because sometimes we do like shadowing, or there are rules and regulations around, because obviously it's patient contact and things, but sometimes we can do it with patient consent and things like that. So if anyone did want to have any experience or anything, I'm happy for you to email me.
And if you don't mind, would you be able to put your email in the chat box for us?
Yeah,
please?
of course, I do that now.
And Ben, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. More than happy to have guys come in and have a look at where we are. But if you are looking, obviously, if you're based away from the Watford site or anything, or the West Herts area, most of the time you can go on to the NHS hospital pages, and it will give you a contact within the radiology management group. And if you email them, they will be able to facilitate, or they'll be able to at least give you the email address of the coordinator that would be able to get you in, because I have never heard of anyone being turned away for work experience. The only time we did was when COVID was at its absolute height and we weren't allowed anyone in the hospital. So now we're a little bit more open to getting people in and showing them around and hopefully giving them a good experience.
Brilliant. Good question to ask, and good time to ask it. So yeah, if you're comfortable with it, Ben, if you can stick your email in the chat box, that'd be great. Thank you. So guys, look, it's 10 minutes past 2. It's supposed to finish at 2 o'clock, but with the questions and everything going on, it's always good to steal a little bit of extra time from busy people working in the NHS, and I know that we appreciate it for sure. So I want to say thank you to all the students that have come along today to ask questions, to get involved. Same as yesterday, but it's really good to come along. And I know that we've had some teachers with students in classrooms as well. And I hope that the streaming has worked out well for you guys and that we've got information to those students. Remember that I do drop-in sessions every Wednesday, 4:30 till 5:30. So if you've got questions that have come off the back of this and you're not sure where to turn to or who to go to in a few days' time and you're a bit confused, come back to my drop-in sessions and we can discuss. But also remember to use the resources that have been given over the last couple of days. We've been putting links in the chat box. You should have been taking those away, using them. Don't forget the recordings will be available online as well. So if anybody that you know should make use of these recordings, let them know. Okay. So thank you to all the students that have come along and participated and interacted, and the teachers that are set up in their classrooms. But thank you to Merlina for being here for 2 days, for helping us get this organized, for doing it with us. And to Amanda today, and Ben as well, for coming, for presenting, for answering questions, and to everybody else who was around this morning and yesterday as well. Thank you guys for making this a great 2 days of virtual taster days. So I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I hope it obviously gives people the opportunity to really focus on where they're going ahead, and it didn't cause too much of disruption in changing your minds.
And if it has caused a disruption in you changing your mind, that's probably the best thing. And that's the best part about coming to these sessions, because of exactly what Merlina has just said. You come along, you discover, you find out, you ask questions, and you either solidify what you want to do, or you maybe change tack slightly because you were introduced to something new that you didn't know about. Okay. And that's the best part. So hopefully we've hit the nail on the head and you've all been inspired. Let's hopefully see you on some more events. But thank you to everybody for making these the last couple of days really successful for us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant.